And that's what I'm excited about. What I'm doing, or why I'm doing this, is I want to know the stories. I want to hear the stories.
Yeah.
You pack more in the fuel cell because
Right.
it was cold.
You should get, yeah.
And then as you're running, it's warming up, and
Right.
you're getting more gas. Oh,
Right.
wow.
Wow,
see
that's
it.
awesome.
So,
I didn't realize how close the snowball came to going away.
It was very, very close.
Holy
Very
cow.
close.
Are you saying that your brother is Jeff Taylor, like Jeff Taylor, Shaw by Jeff Taylor?
Yep.
Race car?
Yes, sir. That's him.
Wow. All right. Hey guys, welcome back to the Short Track Shakedown. I am Josh Goodwin, alongside with Jake Marr. Jake, how are you today?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Man, I can't complain. We have a great show for you today. We have Scooter Grice here sitting with us, and Scooter is known far and wide on the asphalt and the dirt tracks on both sides of it, and we look forward to this conversation. Scooter, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here, Josh. Thank you.
Appreciate you sitting down with us today. Scooter, I want to kind of just jump right into the interview here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and also, how did you get started in racing? I know that we've been family a long time, and I know most of your story, but there may be some stuff that I don't know and the listener doesn't know. So just tell me all about it.
Oh, wow. So how much time you guys got?
We got plenty.
So I was really born into racing. I'm third generation of 5 now, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Started going to the racetracks at a very young age. The racetrack was sort of my babysitter.
Mm-hmm.
And just my grandfather would take me to the races, and then my friend's dad down the street, actually Clint Holmes, Jesse Holmes was his dad.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up with Clint, and I would go to Five Flags with Clint and Jeremy and Jesse on Friday night, and we'd go to Gateway at the dirt track or Flomaton on Saturday night with my granddad.
So who's your granddaddy?
Foots Kimmons. Pretty, I guess he's Pensacola famous for racing, and he owned a junkyard down in Brownsville. And
That's down there on Border Street, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Border Street. He pretty much, I can't say, I knew so many race car drivers at a young age because they would come down there, and it seemed like it didn't matter if it was dirt, asphalt, drag racing people. People came to his junkyard to get parts, and he would, in most cases, just tell them to take it with him. And that junkyard was basically there to support the racing in this area. So
yeah, Poppy was always good to me when I come along. He was anything we ever needed, we would go down there.
Yeah.
And Poppy would just give it to us.
Yeah, so I guess it kind of started. I was 5 years old, and I had a go-kart. I'd been riding motorcycles. I started motorcycles at 3 with training wheels. And then I think mom and dad thought I was going to kill myself because I was getting where I was pulling wheelies, and I rode it off into a pond and some other stuff. So they got me a go-kart. And Thomas Taylor, another famous racing name from around here, we would go over to, I think it was Brownsville Middle School, and they had a clay running track in the playground area. And we would sneak over there and get the fence open and take my go-kart and would race around the track at Brownsville Middle School, right across from Goulding Scrapyard.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would run around there until one Saturday I blew the engine up.
No doubt.
Yeah. And man, I was just distraught. And somehow we came about a go-kart engine that somebody had tricked out, and we didn't really have go-kart racing.
Mm-hmm.
So there was really no avenue for a kid in the 70s and early 80s.
Was that before the Pensacola racetrack on McCoy?
Oh, yeah. So
Old Corey was done?
Yeah, that was actually like a rental car track, like Fast Eddie's.
Oh, really?
And it was pavement.
Oh,
so you
wow.
would go there and rent. And I can go so many places with that. But I remember going there and would ride in people's laps because they didn't have 2-seaters and would drive at that little go-kart track on Old Corey Road before it was Pensacola Dirt Track.
Holy cow, that's awesome.
So yeah, that was a rental car go-kart track. But no, we really didn't have it. We got a tricked out engine for my little go-kart, and that little thing would run. And I went over there, and I can't remember. I turned it over, and the chain cut the back of my arm. And I had a great aunt that lived on the property at the junkyard. She only had one leg. She was in a wheelchair, and her name was Aunt Pete. And she told my granddad he him to get me in something that had a body around it before I killed myself, run underneath one of those junk cars in the junkyard.
Right.
So when I was 5, they got me a Honda Civic, and I cut me a racetrack in that junkyard, little 2-acre field surrounded by junk cars. And that's kind of how it got started, to be honest with you. I remember not long after that, my dad would make me drive. He made me drive him to Kmart. I was 5. My dad, he wasn't a cop quite yet, I don't think, but he made me drive him to Kmart on Kim Strand and 9 Mile, and I cried the whole way. But it was a 5-speed Toyota pickup with the blinkers up on the fenders. Y'all remember all that?
Yeah, holy cow!
So I could drive at a very early age. I mean, extremely early, and had control, and that's just sort of how it got going. And then the way I started racing, really, I was in the 7th or 8th grade, and Southern had just opened.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking this is like 1988 or 89.
This is when Barney and them first opened it?
Yeah. And they had a mechanics race. Now, mind you, it was Saturday, and I remember this distinctly. I had on a Bellevue Packer football jersey from playing Little League football that morning or that afternoon, whatever the case was. And we had left straight from the game to go to the racetrack. Well, at the end of the night, they announced, or at intermission, they announced that they're going to have a mechanics race. Mm-hmm. And I went over to my granddad, who was usually in the beer garden up against the fence, having him a good time.
Right. And
I said, hey, if they'll let me drive that mechanics race, do you mind? And he says, hell, I don't care, and,
Poppy was always pretty nonchalant about things.
He didn't think nothing of it because he saw me drive all the time. But I mean, so I'm like, man, oh well. And it was like $5 or something to enter this thing. So I went out into the pits, and Charles Bartee, who worked with my dad at the Ford place, had a little car, and he let me drive his car. He said, yeah, you can drive it if they'll let you sign up. So I went over there. I guess he probably didn't think they'd let me sign up because I was 13, 14 years old, right, if that. And but it was for the hobby division. Mm-hmm. But Charles's car was a hog car.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. So I remember they let me sign up, and I started the race, and that was the first time I ever drove a car.
How'd you do?
Dead last.
No.
Yeah. So the hobby class wasn't nothing to play with back then.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember.
So, yeah, I was just out there making circles.
You brought a knife to a gunfight.
Oh, not only no fire suit. I probably had shorts and cleats on, to be honest with you.
Get away with more back then.
Yeah. So that was my first time driving. Then after that, I think the next season came around, and I had a cousin that had a car, and he was racing in the hog division. And he ends up getting thrown out or suspended for fighting. And we were, David Kaiser was a kid I went to school with.
Oh, yeah.
And
I remember David.
Yeah. And we would help my cousin. Well, when he got thrown out, the old car just got left at the racetrack, because back then the hog division was just that. I mean, it was borderline demolition derby style cars. And you would just take them and leave them at the racetrack, and you'd see an old guy show up with get in the back of his truck, get a battery out and a tire and a jack, and he'd go over and work on his car. The car stayed at the track all
They
week
were like
long.
big old boats, like old Cadillacs.
Yeah, it was like a
Buicks.
75 Ford LTD with a 460 in
big
it.
old boat. Big old boat.
4-door, yeah. Had half a roll cage in it. Like
Holy
literally,
cow.
it had the hoop behind the driver's seat, and then just basically a down bar from that coming down with some, pretty rugged, we'll say, very poorly welded roll cage on the, for door bars.
So it was a first class death trap then.
Oh yeah. I'm
First class.
and my parents don't know.
Uh-huh.
They had no idea. And the odd part was my granddad would, he lost his driver's license in like 1989, but nobody knew it. And he couldn't see well enough to pass his driver's test. So the part of the reason I'd get to go to the races is because I'd have to drive him to the racetrack.
That's awesome.
And I didn't have the first sign of a driver's license.
Right, yeah.
So anyway, forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, it was a different time and a different world.
Yeah.
But I ended up driving. So my cousin's car gets left at the track. Well, one weekend they had like 1,000 to win bomber feature or something.
Oh, and this is at Southern?
This is at Southern.
Okay.
So this is Barney. You know, Barney was a character, and Steve Stokes was the promoter.
Oh yeah.
And they knew how to put races on, and they were ran like a well-oiled machine. And that track, it was cut a little different back then. It was usually one groove, but it was smooth as silk. It was dry slick, but it was smooth as silk back then. But anyway, long story short, the cousin gets suspended. They're having 1,000 to win race. Well, that Saturday I'd got to the junkyard, and my mom dropped me off or whatever. And I told my granddad, he goes, well, hell, we'll take a battery down there. If that old car will crank, you can run it.
Right.
So me and David got excited. So we had us a race car then at that point.
No doubt.
Yeah, because my cousin Rusty got thrown out. So we did that 2 or 3 times. And, I don't think I had I don't remember anything. I might have finished second in a heat. I don't remember. It wasn't nothing memorable.
Right.
But other than just how it went down. But sometime the next, so I'm probably 13 then, 14, somewhere right there. And the next year he's like, well, if you want to race, my granddad, if you want to race, go out in the field and there's an old Chevelle out there that needs a fender on it. And I want you to drag it up here with the wrecker and put it in the shop. And then there's another one out there that's got a front end on it. And you're going to take the front end off of that one. And he goes out there and he shows me what to take off. And he says, you take the front end off that car and put it on that one there. Well, I couldn't understand. I just needed a fender. So I'm out there working. And he says, he comes out and says, what are you doing? I said, I'm taking the fender off this car. He says, I told you to take the whole front end off. I said, well, I just need a fender. And he says, no. He says, if you took, these 2 bolts up, there was 2 bolts under the hood, 2 bolts under the fender, 1 inside the door, and then 2 core support bolts, and the whole front end would come off with Chevelle then.
Oh, holy cow.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there was about 30 bolts to get that fender off.
He was trying to help you out.
He was trying to help you out.
And he was
Right.
So anyway, that was, I got yelled at a little bit. I mean, he was pretty hard on me. He really was. But anyway, nonetheless, we put the car together, and the next season we ran it Baldwin County Raceway, aka Summerdale, which was down the street from the old Loxley.
Was that first red 34?
Yeah.
That picture of you coming off 4 and Poppy standing there by it?
Yeah, that was the very first time I ever drove it. And that's one of my most, I get chill bumps. That's my favorite picture.
Now, Summerdale, is that the same track that Todd was talking about that got shut down because of the noise ordinance?
Yeah, it was a beautiful track, man, but it was in a neighborhood, and I mean, they had an enclosed, seems like the concession stand was like you walked in like McDonald's. You walked in a door and you ordered your food. They had cooking hoods and stuff. It was a very nice place with concrete bleachers, very first class. And that's where I raced. And the first season there, I think
was that in 90 or 91?
Oh man, it had to be 90. Golly, 90 or 90, it's somewhere right there. Yeah, somewhere in that. I was probably a freshman coming out of my 8th grade year, a freshman in high school.
I got you.
So
I wasn't even born yet.
That's we won't hold that against you. You guys both. I mean, if I have to tell you, I had the most awesome childhood. You guys missed some stuff that I wish every kid could see because there'd be more race fans in the world. There really would.
I say all the time I was born in the wrong generation.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I even hate it for my kid. That all 3 of them really, they just didn't get to see the stuff or the people, and it was just different back then. You know.
Well, and there wasn't no such thing as like enclosed trailers back then. Everybody went to the racetrack with an open trailer, and you could see it and going down the road.
Hell, we took mine to the track with a wrecker and pulled it backwards because it had a lock rear end. I didn't even have a trailer, and so that's funny right there that you brought that up because I remember going to Baldwin County Speedway, and again, my parents did not know quite yet that I was racing.
Right.
So my granddad he'd pull up in front of the house right there on Mobile Highway where my parents live. And I'd go out and get in the wrecker, and he'd have, and I'm not kidding, we'd have like the steering wheel tied with an old piece of twine or whatever we could find because it didn't have a column in it. You couldn't lock it, so you didn't want the wheels to turn.
Right.
Car go down the road sideways.
Exactly. So one time we couldn't find it and had it tied up with a water hose. I mean, just you just had to be there. I mean, there was a lot. It was rough, rough.
Didn't matter how you got to the track, as long as you got there.
Yeah, exactly. And but anyway, going back, he would pick me up in front of the house, and we'd drive away, and again, my parents have no clue, and he'd get over about where the equestrian center is and wheel off the side of the road and say, "All right, it's your turn to drive." So here I am, 14, 15 years old, whatever, not the first sign of a driver's license or a CDL or anything else. And I'm driving this wrecker, pulling this race car that looks like it's coming back from an accident scene. I mean, it's kind of, it's rugged.
It's been raced.
Right. It's been raced. It's been raced well. And yeah, so that we would go to Baldwin County Speedway where I started. I guess that's the first full season that I raced. And we would, I think we finished. It's the only championship trophy I've ever kept. We finished second in the championship.
I'll be damned.
It's the only trophy I've ever kept. I give my trophies away. I don't. You're only as good as your last race. I give it to someone else. I don't want to see it.
Right.
Makes you complacent. So, I would probably keep the snowball derby or a big race trophy. But yeah, most of the time I'm getting rid of them.
Right.
So
from there, so that was 91. So from there, did you race the Chevelle for what, a season, two seasons?
2 seasons, I think. We had that little car, and the next year rolls around, and I still got the Chevelle, and Baldwin County was sort of in trouble with the noise stuff. And so we, somewhere down the line, made the move to Loxley to race.
Now that's the old Loxley, like the LA Speedway.
Yeah, LA Raceway. D-shaped track, had a dog leg a little bit on the back straightaway. Kind of very tricky place. And we would go over there. Well, again, I wasn't listening to my granddad. So I remember I wanted to see what the car looked like with big tires on it. And back then, everybody ran Tile City Recaps, 11-inch tires. Well, we had hundreds of them in the junkyard from the generations that raced before me. So I put them on my car. Right. And he comes out there and says, "Well, what are you doing?" Well, I had cut the fenders so I could get them on there.
Oh, man. Okay.
Right. And so he says, "You know what? You want them on there? You leave them on there." And he made me race my bomber car against the hobby guys. I didn't even get to, so there was actually, I was in bomber, and there was another division called novice.
Yeah, I remember the old novice class. Yeah,
novice was like it was like a bomber car with an 11-inch tire on the right front only. Right. But you ran the 8-inch recaps all the way around from there. But then there was the hobby class. So I'm out there, and I had to race my big Chevelle, unhulled out, big old bumpers, boat. Yeah. I mean, that thing probably weighed 5,000 or 6,000 pounds. It seemed like, But Rochester car, 1-barrel carburetor.
Holy cow!
Yeah, and I had to race against the hobby division, and I won my very first race at Loxley in the hobby division, driving basically a bomber car, with big tires on it. And later on, about 3 weeks after I won that, we went to Flomaton, and the old car had a Power Glide transmission with some kind of pump, front pump, rear pump, some kind of pump. I don't remember. But the starter quit. And Richie Beasley was over there helping me for some reason. I don't even know why. But he was there to help me. And I was by myself, right by myself. So by now, I must be 16. So I was right by myself. And Richie's over there trying to help me with a starter, which was probably something off of, one of the old cars in the field at the junkyard. The starter gave up on me, and I was like, well, I'm going to have to go home. Well, my granddad he wouldn't come in the pits. He'd go sit in the stands. And I go over and tell him, we're going to have to go home. That thing, it won't start. And I don't have another starter. And he says, hell, push it off. And I said, but it's an automatic transmission. He said, put it in low, tell them to get you going about 35 miles an hour, and you hit the switch, and it'll start.
No doubt. So
I did that. Went out there for qualifying, and they pushed me off, and I qualified 10th out of whatever. It was a pretty good group of cars. Back then, the hobby class was.
Yeah, it was stout.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they pushed me off, and the car starts, and I go out, and I think I ran 4th in my heat race. Well, feature time comes around, and whoever was on the pole something happened. I don't remember how it was, but somehow I ended up starting like second or third row on the inside. And Bill Campbell was running he had a Nova. He was pretty fast up there. And I don't know how, but on the first lap, somehow I got in the lead. And I ended up winning the feature.
No doubt.
And I mean, odd story. I don't know how you fact check all this, but if I've raced at Flomaton, and this is people won't believe this if I tell them, but I'm telling you this is the truth. If I've raced at Flomaton 100 times, I've won 95.
I'll be down. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, and I didn't race there a lot, but it seemed like every time I go, we run well or it breaks.
Yeah. Flomaton was just it was just an awesome racetrack. It was, you told me when I first started and racing up there, it's like dancing with a fat girl. You know what I mean? You just you can get a rhythm going up there that's like any other racetrack. It's really good.
It's really easy to overdrive.
Yeah.
It's intimidating. Back then we ran a little higher on the racetrack. Nowadays it seemed like, certain drivers could move around, in the more recent years that we raced there. But everybody likes to race around the light poles, and
I say I didn't. I like being up.
Yeah, you got to drag
high.
your bumper down the wall, getting into three, take you a shot, and you want to aim for the flagman.
Yeah, right. Burp it for mercy, getting in for one, and just
exactly.
Let it eat.
I flipped my car because I drug the back bumper against the wall going into three. My pure stock. That's
don't let off.
Yeah.
Well, one of them walls had been moved and was sticking out, and when my bumper caught it kicked the front end into it, and then I just hit it at a diagonal, and the car barrel rolled from that point.
Oh wow. Yeah, so I ended up winning that feature, and then from there, I guess they saw that I had some kind of talent because I was driving junk. I never had tires, and when I tell you I never had tires, you hear people say, "Oh, we bought one set of tires a year." That
was one set more than you.
Yeah, I got to race what was left in the junkyard from my uncle and and other people in the family that raced, or there were times where I've literally sewn a tire together with shark string for like shark fishing line, take it to the tire store, have them put a boot in it, and then run an inner tube.
Man, that's wanting to race bad right there.
And man, I raced that way till, the mid 90s. That's, I washed cars, and I was an early father in my life. Thumper came along at, 17 years old for me. And I just hustled and I wanted to race. And we did whatever it took to get there. And my granddad, and he saw to it that I had the best start he could give me. And that just led into, sort of better cars and better people and better things, and, just kind of progressed.
Well, talking about being 17 or whatever, so that's about the time that you come into my life. And you're the most favorite car that I have out of all the cars that we've had together, and you personally, that was the old S34. That was the car that I fell in love with as a child, and that's what made me want to race. You know what I mean? And and I know it was probably junk back then, but man, the old S34, it was awesome.
Yeah, man, black iron.
Yeah,
that thing was made out of. We paid $400. I remember going to get it. It was at Jack Cox's house. Kenny King drove for Bobby and Jack. And they had that car, and I paid $400 for it, and took all the stuff off my Chevelle, which is another story here we can get into, but took all the stuff off my Chevelle and put in it. And we had bought, and I mean everything, everything that would fit or we could make fit. In some cases it shouldn't have fit.
Right.
But we had this school bus that we had bought in an auction. It had a 327 in it with a large journal, small journal, something or other. I can't remember what bottom end. It's been so long ago, but it was a rare engine. And my great uncle, Burley Buddy Kimmons, built my engine on a tailgate of a truck.
No doubt.
Out of that school bus. And that thing, the S34, we raced against Ricky Haugen.
Oh, yeah.
Jody and John Joyner. Tom Garrett,
Chet Lucas,
Jimmy Dunaway, Robert Miley.
Greg Hopkins, I think, was in that old class.
Greg was too young.
Was it? Okay.
Greg's I think Greg's a year or two younger than me in high school.
I got you. Okay.
And we all went to the same school. So, But back then, I mean, there was two features for that division, and your ass better be driving if you want to even transfer. I mean, there was a lot of weeks that I won the consolation race and took my money and ran because $100 was better than losing $3, you know. And there was some weekends, depending on how I finished or how the start looked, we would make a decision. Hey, let's see if we can't finish, you know, let's win the consi and take the money. I mean, that got us to the next week. I mean, and I can't tell you how many times, but I mean, that little car there, again, it had tires that were 6 and 8 and 10 years old on it, or was some that I found in the pits that somebody had discarded.
Right.
You know, I tell you, we took the parts off the Chevelle and put on it. Well, it had a BOP rear end in it. Well, it had bolt-in axles is why we ran that. So, and a lot of times I raced by myself. I had Nicholas Rogers, who oddly enough is the race director, I think, at Five Flags now, and he would go with me, but we were kids. And my granddaddy made me leave that rear end in there. That way, if we broke an axle, we could fix it and maybe race, or just have a means of putting it back on the trailer.
Right, right.
Back then, broken axles, we ran drum brakes, so the axles coming out was a big deal.
Yeah. That was the old metric style rear ends, wasn't it?
Well, BOP was not. BOP had bolt-in axles.
Right. Kind of like a Ford, not like a stock Ford 9-inch style.
Yeah, it's still a 10-bolt, but it had bolt-in axles, and we would knock the studs out of it and put truck studs in it or whatever. And again, there wasn't no going to Bryant's or Collins Speedway for me. I got junkyard stuff.
Right, right.
If I wanted a racing spring, I hoped we had a Vega in the field somewhere so I could get a spring that was probably equivalent of a 175 or a 200. Or if I wanted a right front spring, I'd pull it out of a van or a 3/4 ton truck or something heavy.
See, that's a good education, though. I mean, you know, that's making stuff work.
Oh man, we had like a rear end. There was no Richmond gears in my cars. I had Hollander books, which was basically the junkyard Bibles, and you would learn that. I'd go to that Hollander book and learned at a young age that. And I'll just pick
cross-referencing parts.
Right. Well, a 60 or we'll say a 72 Nova with a 6-cylinder came factory with a 308 gear.
Oh,
well, then you take that 308 gear and then you figure out which transmission I had. If I had the 6-cylinder Power Glide or the 8-cylinder Power Glide, you'd figure out how to make the ratio. And that's how I learned to race. And I would have like 2 of those BOP rear ends. Like if we wanted to go to Flomaton, I had one that had a 342 in it.
Oh, no doubt.
You know, and then if we wanted to go to Southern, I'd change it to that 308.
Swap the whole axle.
Yeah, the whole rear end was easier to change than it was for me to do the gear. And just you bleeded the brakes and went back after it. But I mean, that's the S34 was a combobulation of a lot of garbage that most people would discard.
It was some fast garbage.
Steering wheel. Yeah. Even the steering wheel. I mean, I got the steering wheel and I think I gave it to you when you were a kid one time.
Yeah, I had it.
It was welded together. And I wanted a disconnect steering wheel so bad because all the other race cars had one, and I had an old school bus steering wheel, you know, and had water hose. You'd take a split of water hose, you know, long ways, and you'd wrap it around the steering wheel, and then you'd take electrical tape and you'd make it fat for your hands. And I'd have a big steering wheel. A lot of people don't realize this. I raced without power steering for probably 20 years. Yeah,
I was about to say, you didn't get power steering all the way up till Sid's car, I think.
Yeah, I didn't. I think, the modified, it was 90. Yeah, so it wasn't 20 years, but it seemed like 20 years. But 95, that was probably the first car. But even later years into the pavement stuff, I would drive without power steering in the long races, 100 and 150 lap races.
Man.
I'd run without power steering. Well, I mean, I played ball.
But if you got the caster right, it's not as hard as you think on like the late model stuff. Now some of this other stuff it is.
No, 150 laps at Mobile without power steering, and it's July.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
You're an athlete, So someone that tells you a race car driver is not an athlete, they could have gotten an in-car camera with me back then. They'd change their mind.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
But yeah, the S34 was certainly probably what. I won't say it's what made me, but that little car just seemed to always run well. I never won a lot with it, but we finished in the money.
Yeah.
Or win the car.
I mean, it was just fast, but it was also a pretty car. I mean, the way that y'all had it, I mean, for the era of cars back then, it was still a pretty race car.
So the funny story, that thing was Rust-Oleum red.
Right.
Right. And then the interior color I painted with a paintbrush, and it we would get the paint. Someone worked at the Navy Yard, and they would bring home the Blue Angel yellow, and that's actually what the interior of that car was. It was painted with that Blue Angel yellow paint with a paintbrush.
Holy cow!
And then the outside, it was kind of a matted red, and had a Fairmont bumper, and then the front note. Back then, we didn't run nose pieces, so there was no Monte Carlo.
Right.
I think I took some plastic that my granddad had acquired from the landfill out there, and I made some kind of headlight covers, and I took a Malibu grill and put in it, and the whole car just didn't look bad at all for what it was.
Right.
So Jake, just so you're aware of what we're talking about, that's the car right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the chrome wheels on there. Yeah. So the chrome wheels, again, hand-me-downs. The chrome wheels came from my cousin Robert Duke.
That's what he's talking about on the front end. How he took some plastic.
That ain't bad looking.
No,
for what?
That's what I'm saying, man. The OS-34, it was a good looking race car for its era, and that was a good looking race car for back then.
So I had 3 chrome wheels, right? And my granddaddy wouldn't buy me the 4th one. I guess the guy only had 3, or so maybe one got bent, or maybe it come off a car that was wrecked or something. I don't know. We had 3 chrome wheels, so we went and bought some Rust-Oleum Alabama chrome spray paint. And I had one wheel that was kind of more silver than the other.
That's funny.
Wes Paul would refer to that as a Hodaddy wheel.
That's right. That's right. There ain't nothing wrong with it.
So, but yeah, that little car right there, just it really gave me a confidence to be able to do other things. Mm-hmm. And right after that, we built a Camaro. I just never ran as well with.
That was that white 44 car, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was my junior or senior year auto body project, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I won some races in it, but there was nothing that drove like that thing right there. Now that car, to go back to the rear end, where I was going with that is the BOP rear end is about 4 inches wider than it needs to be for that car. And I finally figured out at some point I needed an offset wheel, in order to make the car work, because it was forever loose because the rear end was wider than the front end. But nonetheless, we raced. We raced what we had. I mean, that's just the way it was. You put together and assembled. Again, there was no Speedway for scooter. Speedway existed, but there was nothing. If I didn't get, Todd talked about on the podcast a few weeks ago about Frank Butler, man. You go to Frank Butler's, get a set of TRW pistons, have them pressed on the rods, and I think it was a Elgin Blue Racer cam that was like $89, 500 lift hydraulic, and that
was the Camaro he was just talking about.
Leaf spring Camaro,
leaf spring car. I think after that, the one thing about a Camaro is you got to drive them straight. Right. You really can't pitch a Camaro. The leaf spring, I don't know if it's just how you got to drive a car. You got to drive them straight. And once I figured that out, we did better with that. I drove for Bobby Cox.
I was going to ask you about Bobby and that car. Yeah. That was a Sweet 16.
Yeah. So I think and the odd part is I know the entire history of the car. Robert Nellums had built the car for Scott Stedham. Scott had gotten out of racing. So Scott owns A1 here in Canton.
Yeah.
Scott had sort of he was getting out of racing. And so the car somehow ended up with Bobby. Kenny King drove it for a season or two. And that right there, that's when I sort of realized, hey, Kenny King didn't want to drive for Bobby. Bobby called me, and they had a falling out. I don't know, or maybe he couldn't drive. I don't know what it was, but Bobby had called me and asked me to drive the car. So we went up there. I was actually dating your sister, and we were supposed to go out that night. And somehow I think I had a pager go off. So I pull off, find me a payphone, call the number, whoever it is, it's 911. So he's like, hey, we're at the racetrack. You want to come drive this car? So we stopped our date that night, and I ran back home, got my fire suit, and went to Southern. I won the feature.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then the next week we went back out there, and I think I won the feature that weekend. Driving the Sweet 16. I think Bobby, Bobby's dad, Jack, was quite the engine builder back then. And, man, that thing, I don't know what voodoo he has with race cars, but the man can build a car.
Oh, yeah.
To this day, that's probably the best driving dirt car I've ever had.
Yeah.
Or ever driven. Wasn't mine.
Yeah.
But we won, 3 or 4 races. I think Bobby sold it after that season. And, so then I was back on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had gotten an old asphalt car from another Camaro from, I don't remember where we got it, but it was, Johnny Mitchell / Randy Brooks's sportsman car.
So that was the car that Rex
built. Rex built.
So last week when we were talking with Ricky or whatever, and I was talking about my first cage that Rex had built, he's talking about that car.
Okay.
That's the cage, 10, 15 years later, I ended up with that same car, and we cut the cage out of it because the car at that point was rotten, but the cage was still good, and that was the cage that I put in my first car.
Yeah. Okay. So we drove that one, and I think I had to race Super Street with it.
Yep, I remember that.
But again, I was a knife at a gunfight. But so I started. We won our heat race one night, and this is a funny one. We won our heat race. Well, back then there was no dual master cylinder. I had a Chevrolet
right
master cylinder, and the old car. I hit the brakes to stop at the scales.
Mm-hmm.
After I won my heat race, and the brake pedal fell off, 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 into the floorboard.
No doubt.
I rolled right through the technician. Hey, stop! And he's like, you got to stop. And I was like, I can't stop. So it had a standard shift transmission in it. Well, I think Richie had a car or something. I can't remember how the story goes exactly, but anyway. Someone had fallen out, and there wasn't but 4 or 5 cars, maybe 6 cars in the race that night. A couple of good ones had gotten a wreck or something. Well, I'm like, I needed the money.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I raced, and my granddad would let me. He'd let me keep what I made, and
right.
I'd have lunch money for the week.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
I mean, that's it. I wouldn't say I was racing for a living. I was racing for lunch money.
Right.
He'd help me get to the track, and that's basically whatever I made. If it was $60, that's like it's $60.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, I'm like, well, I'm going to start the feature just so we collect something. Maybe I'll ride around. It's got a standard shift transmission. I'll ride around and the thing, and 2 or 3 of them fall out. I'll finish and get me a little money and go home. Well,
so you didn't put the brake pedal back on?
No. So it had rusted off. There was nothing for me it had broken off at the mount.
So you're going to ride around with no brakes. Like
so
there's no pedal.
There's not even nothing to make you feel good about pushing it.
Right.
Because every now and then you just want to know there's something there.
You're right.
No.
Okay. You could have put a broom handle in it or something.
Yeah, there was nothing. I had a gas pedal and a clutch pedal.
Okay. All right. I'm on board now.
We go out there, and I started last and I think we run second in the feature. I didn't even have a brake pedal.
That's
that's
awesome.
So I'm
not making a victory lap. I'm trying to stop.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because they had a red flag, and or something that had occurred, and I can remember trying to downshift the car so I didn't run over nobody, and I kind of ran down into the infield and purposely got in the mud so the car would stop, because back then the infield, well, even now, the infield in front of the flag stand was pretty muddy, so that's what I did. I rolled down there and got in the mud until I got in thick enough mud to stop the car.
Holy cow.
I was thinking ahead.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had a plan, but my goal was, and honestly, I don't recall racing. I remember I was just riding around, just trying not to hit nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I actually had a successful night out of it.
Well, and it does happen like that sometimes. Sometimes you just got to stay out of trouble and you finish in the money.
Yeah. So
I've done that many nights at Southern when we had 24 pure stocks.
Yeah.
Just ride, something wrong with the car, just go out there and ride and end up finishing 5th or something.
Yeah. It was telling you about Flowington one of the night we had back when IMCA started. And there was like Todd Jones and Curtis Galbraith, and there was a bunch of people there. Well, we had an old Power Glide in the car with the valve thing on it, and something had happened to the transmission. And Sid's like, just go out there and circulate, and just make laps. Sid, of course, who I drove for.
Yeah.
And just go out there and circulate and make laps. We'll take some money home. Well, hell, I just told you I've been in that situation before. So we go out there, and 2 or 3 of them wad up, and all of a sudden I'm out there, and I'm the only car on the track.
Oh wow!
And the transmission's slipping so bad it won't hardly even go.
Oh wow!
Well, Todd Jones glued his together good enough to come back out onto the track.
Mm-hmm.
And he's making laps, but he's unlapping himself because I'd done been out there by myself making laps.
Oh man!
So in the transmission, it just barely would, and finally it welded up whatever was in it. I don't remember how it worked, but it welded up something in the drum and the transmission, and that thing locked up. And the car was, all of a sudden I could drive it. I just couldn't touch the brakes or it'd shut it off.
Oh, wow.
Clutch packs welded together.
Clutch packs welded together, and I think we won or finished second or something. We finished very well against adversity. It was just kind of strange.
Well, speaking of Todd and Sid and all this, Todd told us a story, and I got to hear your version of it. It's something to do with Ronnie Harris and reverse.
Man. So I was going through a hard time in life, and had some things occur, and I'd been given some medication to help me with anxiety. And we went and raced, and I got into Ronnie in the heat race. And I'm going to tell you, and Josh can attest to this, growing up watching me race, when I need to be aggressive, I'm aggressive. I don't think twice about 3, 4, 5. It doesn't matter, 5 wide, if whatever it takes. And Ronnie knows this. I mean, Ronnie grew up in Brownsville. He's very aware. I'm not afraid to scratch it. And so I got into Ronnie in the heat race, and I remember immediately I got into it. I did not mean to get into him. It was a racing deal for me. It was sort of one of those things. I got down in, I guess what you'd call the slider line, and I got my left front into the mud, and the car skated up and caught him in the right rear, or in the left rear, and spun him out. Well, he was leading. And he was rightfully so mad with me. And before I could even get back to the flag stand, they black flagged me. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I held my hand up. I realized I'd screwed up. Mm-hmm. I didn't mean to, but I was just being too aggressive. And so I'm idling around, going up coming off the track at Southern, and I could hear the car coming, and he hit me going up the pit ramp, much like what went on the other day. And he hit me and drove underneath my car. So again, I was on some medication. I can't remember what it was called, but I was going through a divorce. I mean, so I don't remember what it was called, but I didn't have a lot of emotion. And I remember rolling down off his car, and I was going to go to drive away. And I got about 6-8 foot in front of him. And I was like, you know what? I ain't driving away from this, because I really didn't mean to get into him. But you don't run over somebody going into pits. You're gonna hurt somebody. You don't know if I've got my belts off, my helmet. You don't know. And I put the car in reverse, and I backed up till I got to his windshield post, and then I put it back in gear, and I tried to drive off and snatch the carburetor off of it.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
so I got definitely black flagged then.
Yeah, I was suspended. So the odd part is I got suspended for that, and I was out. And then that Sunday afternoon, I got a phone call at the house there, and it was somebody from the racetrack. I can't remember who it was, but they were like, we want you to come back. And they let me come back the next week. And, but anyway, that night Todd was there, and Todd's like, well, hell, they didn't suspend the car. They suspended Scooter. So that's how Todd really got into the racing family with us. I mean, he sort of became a member of my family that night. I mean, we had raced together and fought and cussed at each other and whatnot. And, but it seems like ever since that night, Todd and I have had a relationship where Todd calls me about weekly, if not daily sometimes. Mm. And he's been a true friend. And we still have our run-ins on the racetrack and shoot each other to bird and get mad with each other. But the next day we usually hug each other's neck, and we figure it out, And again, Todd knows I'm aggressive. I had to be, I drove junk. But once I got in good cars, I didn't realize I needed to shut that switch off for a few years. Yeah.
Hey, Josh, I need some parts for the modified.
Well, you need to give Lake Brooks at Z Speed Shop a call. He is a new mobile speed shop and would be more than glad to help you with all of your race car part needs.
Yeah, Lake brought over his trailer of parts for us to look at. And I mean, he's got everything that you could think of, and whatever he can't get, he can order.
Yeah, the parts, it was literally like walking into a catalog. From A to Z, he's got it. He is also a fuel distributor for VP Fuels. being a mobile unit in the Pensacola area. I know since USA Performance closed, there's not a whole lot of places to buy racing fuel. So please give Lake a call at 704-924-0750. Again, that is 704-924-0750, and he'll be more than glad to help you out. He can even bring the parts to you on location for a very small nominal fee. If it was after hours or anything like that, he'll be more than glad to accommodate you.
Lake is conveniently located in Pensacola.
So I want to kind of back up just a minute. So we got to talking about the modified and stuff like that, but that was in the 95 season when you started driving for Sid.
I don't know about that. I don't think that occurred in the 95
season.
I
think that was in
95 when I started driving for Sid.
So in that 95 season, and for our listeners here, and the reason I want to hit on this is because there's a lot of listeners that have heard me talk about Sid and how instrumental he was in my life, and basically was my teacher. He taught me how to build engines and how to build cars and bodies and stuff. But I want to explain to the listener who Sid was as a man and how we all, I came to know Sid through you. But tell me the story of how you ended up driving for Sid, and then let's kind of elaborate for just a second on who Sid was.
So Sid's an instrumental person in my life, and when I mean life, I mean life. My parents were there for me, of course. I had good parents, good grandparents, but Sid did some things for me that I still use to this day. But so how I came to know Sid, I was washing cars at Key Ford. My dad worked at Key Ford. He was also a cop, but I sort of have Key Ford's like family to me. A lot of people still there to this day. But anyway, I'm washing cars at Key Ford, and Rochelle Scherer, Robin Scherer's wife, comes out there to me and says, "Hey, what are you doing tonight?" And I said, "I don't know. Whatever, shooting pool, whatever. I don't know. I didn't shoot pool, but I was doing something." She goes, "Well, would you want to go drive a modified tonight?" Hell yeah. I'd been driving. Well, whose car is it? She goes, "It's Sid and Gary Core." I remember that's how she said it. And I said, "Well, what car is it?" Well, she told me, and I'm like, and I go to Southern pretty often. I don't remember that car at all. And what had happened, Sid built a car, and he had a guy, and I can't remember the guy's.
Terry Smith.
Okay, it was Terry.
Yep.
I knew that, but Smith I didn't know.
Yep.
But Terry Smith then was the original driver of the 7X, and I guess he didn't show up for work one night at the racetrack. So Sid packed the car up and went back home, and I think it was a 2-day show at Southern, and this was a Saturday. So she says, "You need to go to this address," and it was right there at Fairfield and Patricia Drive, and talk to this man. He wants you to drive his car. Like, he don't know me from Adam's house cat. Right. So I show up, and he said, "Boy, you got some big shoulders. I don't know if you can get in this thing." I was still in football body back then. So I get in the car, and he's like, "Well, you're all right in there. It's not as bad as I thought." I said, "Well,
they had that old D&M seat in it.
I'll never
forget that
which
seat.
Is like, I mean, honestly, that seat, compared to what we sit in now, that thing's like a love seat.
Oh yeah,
I'd go to sleep long ways on it. It's huge. I don't know what he was thinking. Huge. Yeah, it was a big old seat. And so I showed up that evening. I sat in the car. He liked me. We talked for a little while, and then I went back home. There was nothing to do to the car. This car was pristine.
Oh yeah, always perfect.
Always, and it was immaculate. It was clean. Beautiful car.
And up until this point, you two were just driving whatever you found in junkyard. So this is a big jump.
Yeah, this is huge for me. This is enormous. I had driven for Bobby Cox. I'd driven some one-off stuff here and there for some other people, but I really never got anything that was like long-term driving where I've got a ride. Right. So we went to Southern, and the very first night out that I drove it, I won my heat race. And then I started on the pole of the feature. It was IMCA, but I had no points. So somehow I'm on the pole of the feature, and I went down into turn 1, and the track was dry slick. I think I made it through 1 and 2, but when I got to 3 and 4, I looped it and tore the car up.
Mm-hmm.
Not
now,
bad.
They modifies are 8-inch tires still.
Yeah.
Then,
so
what were you driving before? What was that?
So it was Tile City cars or EC1
so
McCreary's.
10-inch tires.
10 or 11. I mean,
Yeah.
the McCreary's EC1s, I think they're 11.
Yeah.
So you're driving a lot less tire.
Yeah. I'd never even sat in a modified. So to win my heat race was and I think I won it going away. I mean, like there was no competition. And so anyway, I ended up wrecking it in the feature. So then we come back, and I remember I walked up, I said, I'm sorry I tore your car up, Mr. Sid. I probably just lost that ride. I didn't mean, I was distraught because I had never been in something like that. And I said that to him. He says, son, it ain't nothing we can't fix. We'll put it together and try again. So I guess I perked up and I went over there and I helped them wash the car that Sunday morning. And we showed up the next week and I repeated the process. I won my heat race and started up front for the feature. I led 24 of 25 laps and spun out on the last lap coming out of 4.
No doubt.
Oh God.
And yeah, so there's that. So I was like, man, this guy's going to fire me. And I'm making too many mistakes. I'm not used to the car.
A million things going through your head coming off the track.
I never had direct drive. I didn't know how to operate. It was just a whole learning curve.
So to tell you about this car, right? I think we still have this car somewhere, don't we?
No.
It finally got okay. So anyway,
it got where it was getting pimples.
Yeah,
rust pimples.
Mm-hmm.
So this car back then was like our cars today are 4-link cars, and you've heard of a 3-link car, right?
I know what a 3-link is.
This is a 2-link car. All right.
And
so he can explain better what that is, but it was a 2-link car. And it didn't rear up like our cars now.
Right.
It stayed flat and it drove more like a leaf spring car.
It would rear up.
Would it?
But it was a little different. So to put it in perspective, the right rear clamp, 2-link, basically meaning the trailing arm on the right rear was clamped onto the rear end as a solid mount, went down and then teed into a bar that went forward, had a heim joint in and tied into the chassis, but it floated at the axle, much like a bird cage, and then was tied in at the pickup point on the chassis, and it had a heim joint there. So it floated. The other side was the same exact thing, and they looked identical if you just looked at them, only that it floated. Or no, I'm sorry, the left rear was
solid, wasn't it?
The left rear was the one that was solid. So the right rear tire would move. No, that's right. The left rear was solid.
Yeah.
The right rear tire would float forward. So instead of now you see rear steer, it was actually the opposite of that. Okay. So the car would tighten up. Okay. As you went through the turn. Again, hey, I'm stupid. I didn't know nothing. I'm just driving. Right.
This is all different technology to you.
So, yeah, I'd never even had a dual master cylinder. I didn't know what brake bias was, what it did. I didn't know how to adjust it.
Whole culture change, everything.
No, nothing. I didn't know anything.
So Sid was like an innovator, all right? And this goes back to kind of who Sid was. And, we've talked about him building cars for Lenny Boyette and Bob Salter and stuff like this, but he was like an innovator. And he would come up with these rear suspensions for these things, and he can attest. I'm telling you the truth. At one point, and I don't know if this was on this particular car, but at one point he took a Reese bar off of a trailer hitch, a Reese trailer hitch.
And you're telling our secret.
Well, but
I guess we can let this go.
The statute of limitations is over.
No one would ever try it.
No, nobody would ever try it now. But Pop took a Reese bar, a square. It's a wedge looking thing. It's a for our listener, it is a
load leveler.
Yeah, yes, exactly, for like a Reese hitch, like you put on your truck for like hauling a trailer. Well, Pop took it, and it was 1 inch square on the back side, and it tapered down into like a 3/8 at the end of it,
like a door wedge.
And he would take this Reese bar and put it on the left rear and built a mount for it. And it was on a heim. And that's what the rear end didn't have no top link on it at all. It didn't have and they raced this car off of that Reese bar. and run asphalt with it, dirt, all kinds of stuff.
The race bar was acting as a pull bar, kind of.
So honestly,
he can explain it better than I can, but yeah.
So yes, so you've got the fifth coil stuff that a lot of late model teams and that are doing.
Kind of like a lift bar.
It was almost like a slapper bar you would put on a leaf spring, or it was.
It was preventing the rear end from rotating?
No, it wasn't just doing that. It was increasing spring rate.
Right.
Okay.
All right. So as the car would get up on the bars, for lack of a better term, this thing would just sit there and just drive the left rear tire into the ground.
Okay. It was a lever.
Yeah,
basically.
it was basically a cantilevered but I go on to say that so a lot of pavement late model guys like that. If the further you can get that top link over to the left, usually the more drive it gets you. Well, imagine that top link's now over there
on the trailing arm.
On the trailing arm.
Okay.
So the car, it really promoted drive, but it had its advantage and its disadvantages. Also,
it would tote the left front tire on asphalt.
Yeah, I was toting. I would tote the left front. I think I was toting the left front in modifieds. Now my granddad at Flomaton was famous for toting the left front wheel, but that was a '56 Ford chassis or a Chevelle or with a Mustang body. It was a complete different ball game.
Right.
We were toting the left front before it was cool.
He would come off. He would come off a turn two, and I'm not kidding you. The left front tire would be toting like this, going down the front, the back straightaway. It was awesome.
So and would fly.
Yeah, it would haul ass.
And the funny thing is we went and ran op one time and ran the Rattler, and it's March. I think it's March.
Yeah.
And they let us run, and we went over and convinced John Dykes can we run the modifieds early? Yeah, well, I mean, if there's time, we'll fit y'all in early. Why you want to run early? I was like, because if we get down here, I'm going to Greenville. Well, the difference is Greenville's dirt,
right?
Ops asphalt. Right. We ran the same car at two tracks on the same day, two different surfaces.
Todd was talking about doing that too.
Yeah, we did some crazy stuff.
But see, Pop had that old car set up where you could do that. I'll never forget. Even when I first come along, we were still doing it. Matter of fact, a Scooter come home from Chicago, and we'll talk about him living in Chicago in just a second. But and I'll have to show you pictures of the old race car shop. But there was pegboard all the way around the shop, everywhere. All right. Well, so Pop had these sway bars that were set up for each car, which and by the time that I come along, there was two cars. There was the original dirt car, and then there was the car that we built for Jerome. And he had the sway bars set up, and you know how like on like a pure stock car, because these were metric chassis. That's what they were based off of. But the sway bar was like a real deal sway bar, not like an aftermarket sway bar, like a racing sway bar. But Sid had these things, and they bolted to the bottoms of the frame, and we had to put bushings in them, and one side was solid, but you could
kind of like we used to do in Sportsman on asphalt.
But you could put a sway bar on one of these cars in less than 10 minutes and be ready to go to another racetrack. I mean, he was such an innovator on being able to take one of these early style modifieds, and they'd go run op, they'd go run Pensacola, this, that, whatever, and then go to Milton or go to Flomaton or wherever they were racing at, you know what I mean, and just be able to take the same car and run both surfaces.
Yeah, we raced that first car. We raced it at Southern, op, I think Flomaton. Flomaton definitely. I think we went to Onika once with it. We went to Butler County, which is Greenville. Heck, I ran the snowball. My first snowball derby modified race was in a dirt car.
Yeah, I know. It was in that same car.
Finished 7th. Yeah. There must have been 50 of them out there.
Yeah.
There was no making the show. Everybody started.
Right. Yeah.
It was 90. That was 97.
Modified derby and seeing dirt cars that I'd seen at Southern. I do remember that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's certainly not that way now.
My most distinctive memory of the 97 Derby was we were there to watch Scooter race that night, but Hal Goodson wrecked in qualifying, and you remember the whole body come off that late model qualifying for the Derby. I don't know if anybody else remember that, but I think it was Hal Goodson, that number 16 car.
I remember Hal Goodson. He was a good driver. It was a shoe right there.
I just remember going, like, sitting there as a kid watching, and the body come off, and you could just see the body up in the air, and it landing on the racetrack. It was crazy. It was like it blowed off. It was crazy. But anyway.
No, I mean, Sid Core, I think we kind of touched on that he sort of got the dirt off of me.
All right.
He, when I owe him a lot. I remember, I talked about the car with the brake pedal falling off, and then the old S34 had the wrong rear end in it. I didn't know any better.
All right.
I came up racing out of a junkyard, and I made work what we could make work, and we raced and we ran well and we sucked and we did all kinds of stuff. We had different experiences every time we went to the racetrack. I didn't start getting consistency until I started hanging around with Sid and learning his way of doing things.
He got the part of you that just threw stuff together, made stuff work out, and actually did it right.
Yeah, he would stop me, and I think Sid is actually the one that realized early on, hey, not that I'm any more talented than either one of you guys driving. I think Sid saw something in me though, as far as the building and fabricating of the car, where as time went on, I was able to think like him. I wouldn't say I could think before him, but I could think like him and at least, come up with stuff like he would do.
Right.
And to this day, I mean, my entire career, what I do every day for work, I can look back on things on a daily basis, lessons I learned from Sid.
He helped 100%. You more than just on the racetrack. Everywhere.
Yeah. He became, for someone that was a total stranger in the beginning, he became a grandfather-like figure for me, and really just showed me a different way of going about it that I don't know that I ever would have got out of without him.
I promise you I wouldn't have never.
But see, I'm not the only person. There's others, and I don't want to speak for them, but I at least know of stories. I think, Donnie Brusso, Donnie Yard, I'm not sure, several of our local, what I would call my heroes. You guys didn't get to see them race, but several of those guys would, they came. I think Brusso's number 7 is pretty much because Sid loved the number 7.
Yep, it is.
I don't know. There's some stories there. They can tell Sid stories. The biggest thing I can say about Sid is, I just learned things that I would not have learned otherwise. That carry me through life to this day.
And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, he was a remarkable man. Some of the stuff that he could do, build engines, from welding.
Everything was built. There was very little bought.
Right. And that's so you work with me all the time and how I work on race cars, and me and you, we both build nice stuff, but there's a method to my madness, and that method is Sid's method. And it's not, Sid always kind of worked off the principle, if you can't out-hook them, out-look them. You know what I mean? And it was different, but I
know I've heard you talk about him a lot, and just from hearing you talk about him, I wish I could have had the chance to meet him. I mean,
he taught me how to put the puzzle together, because when you're building a race car or you're building anything in life, whether if I'm putting windows in a house, you have to know what the puzzle is going to look like before you get there. And he taught me how to visualize what I wanted something to look like, and be able to pick it apart and go step by step by step and still be the end goal of what I envisioned. You know what I mean? And that's a very hard thing to do.
Help you figure out the process.
Right. It's a very hard thing to do.
His favorite thing was, that ought to do it. You'd do something. You'd be so proud of it. Oh man, it took all this time. You'd go over and look at it, and you're wanting affirmation, and his affirmation was, that ought to do it. But you know what? I think that, honestly, to make it, I think he got affirmation out of seeing us boys.
Yes. 100%.
I think his legacy lives today.
100%.
And the things and there's still times where I get chill bumps thinking about it, where I feel that presence of that. I don't need affirmation. This is going to work. And, I hope we're making him proud. I really do.
Absolutely. I think that if Sid was here today, whether it be my program, your program, Gavin, Stumpers, any of us, Todd's and Osmond, I think that I think he would be so proud to stand up there and turn one on the fence like he always did. You know what I mean? And just watch us. Yeah. And it was weird being being young, and because I didn't get to race the modifieds like they did, all of that come later for me, you know. So I was kind of the the student, you know, running around and this and that with Sid. Because at the time when I first started racing, I was running with Wayne Burkett and, you know, and keeping cars out there, but I was at Sid's more than I was anywhere. You know what I mean? And I've told that story 100 times. And my first trip in my vehicle by myself after I got my driver's license was to 77th Avenue. And, you know, that's just, and I showed up and I said, Mr. Sid, I want to work on race cars. And the rest is history. You know, he brought me right in and he treated me like a one of his own, you know, from day one. So that's kind of why I wanted to take this opportunity with this podcast and try to kind of tie it all in. That way, going forward, when our listeners hear Sid stories, they'll kind of understand
where it's coming from.
Right, where it's coming from, because we're going to have a lot of them, especially when we have Donnie Brousseau on and a few other folks.
So. Yeah, you're going to be shocked. I mean, the man was instrumental. I remember when I got the ride driving for Sid, Steve Stokes, whom is someone that I've grown to have, you know, I care for Steve, and but early on it wasn't that good.
Right.
Again, I was pretty wild.
Right.
And you know, I remember Steve pulling me to the side and he says, "You driving for Sid Core?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "You're about to learn something." Mm-hmm. He said, that man has fine race cars. You take care of that ride. And I, yes, sir. And I walked on. And, you know, again, I drove from Sid. I started at 19 years old driving for Sid, and I drove for him. I would come home from Chicago. I lived there 7 years, and I would come home from Chicago and we'd do one-off races.
Oh, I remember. Yeah. I was the one there getting the cars ready. So
yeah, and I'd do one-off races. I didn't have time to work on it, and heck, we, you know, I think we had pretty decent success.
Yeah.
And there'd be times I hadn't drove in a year, you know, and would get in the car and we'd run well. And, you know, I sort of, I think about him a lot, you know, but I sort of, like I said, I have a lot that I'm grateful for, and Sid Core and the education I got in that old shop.
And it's invaluable. And kind of touch on what you said earlier. I have made a living in my life multiple times off of the stuff that Sid taught me. I mean, he taught me how to weld, and I can pass a welding test, and I ain't never had no formal schooling or anything like that. Sid taught me how to weld
with one eye.
So that's where I was just
one eye.
So
one eye.
That's where I was going just a second ago. All of the stuff that he did, he built trailers, and I mean, I can show you pictures of some beautiful metal work that he did. And he all did it with one eye. He had a glass eye, and most people did not realize that he only had one eye. Okay. So, I mean, he was just, and I don't remember exactly how he put his eye out, did he?
Working on a motorcycle. I think he lost control of a screwdriver, and it somehow popped back and gouged him.
Did it?
Well, you know, saying all this, I want to touch on, you know, we've talked a couple of times about needing to get this generation into racing, and anybody listening, and this is a perfect example of it. Racing does so much more for you than just at the racetrack.
Oh, 100%.
It introduces so many things. I mean, introduced work ethic to me. I mean, the main reason that just drove me since I was a kid is I needed to afford to race. And
well, you know, to put a bow on what you're saying there, you know, I couldn't get girlfriends in high school because I raced. Mm-hmm. You know,
which probably wasn't too much of a bad thing.
No, but they did. If I didn't go to parties, I went to the racetrack.
Right.
Yeah, me too.
I've had, you know, my parents have been mad at me over racing because I've spent my last dollar in some cases, you know, and spent money I shouldn't have spent. But, you know, God's plan for us is not something that we can see, and it's only something He knows.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But when I can turn around at almost 50 years old and look back and take into consideration the blessings that I have on this day, today, and I turn around and look, the racetrack was the biggest benefit I've had as far as skills and drive and just courage and just the want to put my feet on the ground every day and go out and get it done. Yep. And I apply, you know, I do sheet metal work on generators or exhaust work, and I'm welding and I'm air conditioning and all the stuff that I do on my day to day. When I look back now, I see what God was doing.
Yep.
And the other, to put more into that, the right people, Sid,
yep.
my granddad,
yeah,
my granddad coming into the picture and then stopping when he stopped, and then Sid taking kind of shortly thereafter over. I think a season or two later, I started racing for Sid, and I had that figure in my life. And there's other people, but the two things got me where I'm at, and I'm so blessed. Football was the hustle, and racing has given me the skills.
Yep.
Now, granted, there were other things,
Right.
but for the most part, that's it. And I mean, don't hate on your kids if they love race cars.
Right.
Yeah.
And get them involved. I mean, encourage it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just, yes, it's expensive. It's expensive. It's bad. You know what? So's rehab.
Yeah. There ain't no doubt.
Or a
I used to have that
divorce,
argument with my grandfather.
Exactly. There's a lot of things. There's a lot worse things in life.
Mm-hmm.
And
just like you said, I can weld. I can work sheet metal
Right.
because of racing. I mean, there are so many things that I've gained from racing, like you said.
Yeah.
You know, math, geometry.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I'd pay attention to any of that stuff.
No.
And then once I got racing real hard, I was like, wished I'd have paid more attention.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, there ought to be a class or a school that offers something to do with motorsports in our area. The Snowball Derby is the largest racing event, for everyday short track people in existence.
Yep.
And it's right here in our backyard.
Yep.
And, I'm not sure what that looks like, or if anybody that's listening knows how to put it. But honestly, I just think you would take kids off the street, and there's not enough people learning to be machinists or welders or sheet metal people or electricians or whatever in this world today. And I promise you, get them to a racetrack, they will pick up something that they can use in their life.
100%.
Absolutely.
And not only that, the people that, and I'm very thankful for Sid, and it just like Scooter is for taking the time with me, because if he hadn't of, I don't know who would have, you know what I mean? And we need people like that, just like we,
And I was going to touch on this. That's something else. I mean, grab that kid that doesn't have a father figure or something that's just wanting something to do, and bring them to the shop, show them what to do.
Honestly, we're hurting.
Well,
we're hurting as a sport because there's too many options. The telephone is too easy to get into and just lose hours into, or a video game, and you're not learning nothing.
Right.
And, it's just something. I'm just thankful. Sid Core and my grandpa Foots and people like Todd, good friends.
Oh yeah. 100%.
The racetrack. I mean, we're family.
Yep.
We're family. Whether Curtis Galbraith, God love him, God rest his soul. I remember him wrecking. We were running. So after or during Sid, actually, I was driving a Sportsman late model for my uncle, affectionately known as brother, Uncle Brother.
Yeah, Uncle Brother.
But there's no incest going on there.
Right. I understand. Yeah.
Just I come to call him Uncle Brother because my mom referred to him as brother. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so my uncle, he had a little car, and one night Curtis stuck me in the fence, and just going to the family thing, and he comes over there. He says, "Don't you ever do something?" I can't remember. I'd crossed his nose or something, and he right reared me into the fence, and then he helped me fix the car. So I could run
Curtis
the feature,
and telling another Curtis story. Didn't y'all hook Curtis up with a spike on the left rear or something like that?
So Curtis now. So when IMCA was getting going there, so we're talking 95, I guess 96 somewhere. Curtis was winning about everything. I think he went to Iowa and ran the Super National. I mean, Curtis was the man.
Right.
He's on my Mount Rushmore of people at Southern.
I wish I could interview him on this.
Yeah, no doubt. But golly, he was hard to beat. And Curtis was good about, he knew how to hit you and move you. And he moved me a few times and with the same maneuver. So Sid came up with, it wasn't really a spike as much as it was a bolt that was more or less cut off a little sharp.
Right, right.
Yeah. And so I think, so Curtis got into me one night and it tore that right front off, or at least the rubber part off his car. And,
So that's how that rule got in the rule book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I think honestly, Curtis ended up driving for Sid, on a couple of occasions. I don't think that it was an intentional thing, but I think Sid got fed up with the way Curtis was. Curtis was very aggressive.
He got tired of building left rear quarter panels every week.
And then, that was the other thing. Sid wouldn't take the car to the track with a wrinkled quarter panel for a long time until finally it just got so expensive. I think we bought a sheet metal brake, and I learned how to bend metal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we were at, because he had a performance bodies thing at one point, and we were getting, you'd get 4 or 5 body panel kits. Back then. They call them spruce up specials or something, which is basically the doors and quarters.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so you'd get those, but hell, after I tore them up after week 5, Sid was about sick of putting quarter panels on. Yeah, I mean, so we learned how to make quarter panels, but
that was back in the days when we used the performance bodies, and then had the Revenge noses on it, and the Revenge
the Revenge wasn't here at that.
So what?
Yeah,
that was later.
That was later.
Okay.
Yeah, we were making everything.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, we had an old conduit bender building front bumpers out of it. I mean, it was, it was hard times, man.
Make it work.
Yeah.
So what happened? So you raced for Sid. We'll get us back on the main story here now.
Yeah,
so it's fine. But so you raced for Sid. What come next? You raced for him for a couple of years, or?
So
I honestly don't know. I've heard y'all talk about him, but
I raced from him from 95 until I left for Chicago. I married Shelby in 2002.
And is that why you went to Chicago?
Yeah.
I've actually always wondered that. I know you lived in Chicago, but I never knew why.
Yeah. Well, there's no good reason unless it's named Shelby to live in Chicago.
Okay.
So I'm sorry to all my Chicago people out there, but I made great friends up there. But yeah, Shelby, I moved up there and married Shelby, and we lived there 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years, something like that.
7
now,
years.
Did she live here? Did you meet her somewhere else?
So yeah, I met her. During my divorce, I was at Pensacola Beach, and I just ran into her out there. And the funny part of that story is I gave her, the night I met her, I wanted her phone number. She wouldn't give it to me. I'm like, well, do you like race cars? No. I said, well, do you know any race car drivers? She said, yeah, Tom Petty. And I said, yeah, exactly, Tom Petty.
Yeah.
Number 43, Tom Petty.
Yeah, Tom Petty.
Anyway, so she's like, they don't really do that sort of thing up there. And Shelby's very proper, know. So I was like, well, I remember they gave me a ride back to my truck. Somehow I'd parked at the beach way away from the truck and had to walk. And they gave me a ride to the truck. And I was like, well, hold on for a second. I want to give you something. And I was going to give her one of my hero cards. Running payment late miles.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I scribbled my phone number on the hero card with a Sharpie.
Mm-hmm.
And so she leaves and rides off into the sunset. And
she was here on vacation, right?
Yeah, she was here on vacation with her aunt. And I gave her the hero card with my phone number. And about 3 weeks later, she called me.
Holy cow.
So, yeah, I mean, it kind of happened back. I remember everybody, I was like, man, I met this girl. And they said, yeah, did you get her phone number? I'm like, no, but I gave her mine. Well, that don't matter. She ain't going to call you. I was, yes, she will. And then lo and behold, we were working at NAS Pensacola, and my little Nokia green screen phone went off, and it was Naperville, Illinois, and it was Shelby.
Oh, wow.
So we were married 2 years later.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
That's the cool.
I raced a little bit up there too.
Yeah.
What'd you run in? What'd you race in Chicago?
I ran a few, and very few, but a few asphalt late models at Rockford Speedway.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to run home, and you would have known if I'd have done well.
Yeah. I was about to say I didn't.
Yeah, you'd have known. I didn't do bad, but I didn't do good. Right. It's a little different world up there.
Mm-hmm.
The racetrack, I remember this distinctly. The racetrack had control. You had a spotter, but the racetrack had control or could intercept, and they would be telling me, stay up high and let this car go by. I mean, they really controlled the race. It was micromanaged.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for lack of a better term, I just didn't, I never could get used to the way they raced up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I did okay. I didn't do bad, but I did okay. And
I know how that would work if we tried that here.
Yeah, it was a very
I can't
controlled,
get them to line up single file as a race director. So.
Yeah, it was a very controlled environment, well-run place.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, someday I might own a racetrack. I don't know what the world holds for me, but we'll see what God's doing. But I learned some things there that I would love to institute here because it's just simple. It's just simple thoughts that I'm not saying I'm going to dictate how a race is run or won, but I'm saying I learned some things. Number one, we're not running a racetrack. You're running an entertainment venue.
That's
we're, and so I learned some stuff up there, but I raced at Rockford in late models and I think Lake Geneva before they closed. I ran Allison Legacy cars.
How was that?
Awful. I got outrun by a 9-year-old, but listen, so the Allison Legacy deal, they give you this car. It's got a Mazda spec engine, and the car has to be weighed without the driver, and it has to meet whatever Allison Legacy, says it's supposed to weigh. So, okay, 240, or probably 250 because I was eating good. Gets in this little Allison Legacy car, and 9-year-old that weighs 80.
I already got an advantage.
Yeah, it's an instant advantage. I mean, but so we ran a few of those things. I ran got to go see the Milwaukee Mile. Never got to go to Slinger. Kind of regret that. I had a good time with it. I won the Chicago Indoor Karting Championship at one of the little places, an indoor go-kart track up there.
Okay. I
enjoyed that. It was like electric shifter carts.
Okay.
So that was kind of fun. But I mean, most of my racing I came back home to do.
Yeah.
So
you're up there for what, 7 years?
7 years.
What brought you back here?
Oh, just basic Obama.
Okay.
Yeah, that's basically, I put it, Obama, not to make it political. I mean, he made moves in the auto industry that kind of closed up some manufacturing plants and parts facilities, kind of depressed the economy when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the HVAC, plumbing, new construction business. I think that a lot of that shut down in the 2008
crisis.
Crisis there. And then it was basically I had to move home or lose everything I had, and lost everything I had moving home. I mean, it was, and I'm thankful my parents, they stepped up and helped me. And looking back, I probably didn't deserve it, and I still don't deserve it. But my parents got me back here, and I ended up going right back to the job I had before I left, and moved to Chicago. And 1 year later, in 2009, I think, I went to work at Gulf Power.
Okay.
So
you were coming back and racing here and there when you were in Chicago.
Yep.
And then when you come back, did you race more? Or?
No, well, when I come back, Sid was sick.
Yeah.
Almost immediately. I mean, it wasn't very much. We raced a few races at the tail end of that. So I came back in June of 2009.
Yeah, because I was racing the Bumblebee car for Sid at that point.
So, and then we took the...
no, that was 2008. Sid died in March of 2009.
Okay.
Yeah, that was in 2008 then.
So I came back and we sort of raced it. I think I drove the Bumblebee Flexi Flyer car at Loxley. And then we went through the off season. Sid got diagnosed with carcinoma, and basically his leg was rotten. Yeah. I mean, he was walking around on a broken leg. Essentially, it was two pieces.
Oh, wow.
Building a race car.
Yeah. We built a race car, and then we came out. First race of the season was Five Flags.
That was March 19th of 2009.
Yeah, and Todd won it. Going away,
led every fastest in practice, fastest in the heat race, and then led every lap of the feature.
This is like the night after he died on a Thursday, I think.
Yeah.
I've heard the story that he passed away, and then y'all went to the racetrack and won.
Yeah, but then Dumb Luck Scooter goes to Mobile the next night, and the dang thing won't even run.
So what that whole deal, and I've got pictures of the red car, because it was a black car before all this happened, and how it ended up being the red car is Todd drove it at the Derby the year before that, and it's real funny story how small the world is. But a cat named Peter Engel was driving the 15X car that actually ended up being the Gorilla car that he had a year or two later. Mm-hmm. But that's the car that wrecked Sid's original car in practice. And we had, I think we run, second in the championship that year with Todd or something like that. They had that little 4.7 swap motor in it or whatever. But anyway, they got wrecked. We've put it back together, had to go get the welder from Ricky Brooks and went down there and welded the car back up. Motor ended up blowing up in the actual snowball that year. And so Sid, well, this is about the point where he was starting to slow down a little bit. We knew something was wrong, but we didn't know exactly what right after the snowball. This was in 2007 and, 2007. No, 2008. It was a Derby at 2008. So he was starting to slow down a little bit. And, we had from Scooter, and we'll get to this in just a second because I certainly want to cover all of it. But we had a Rouse engine, a Robert Yates and Rouse engine laying around the shop from the super late model days. It was a 9-to-1 motor, and it had the Yates C3 heads on it and everything. Well, Sid wanted to build this engine to go in the modified for the next season, in the 2009 season. Mm-hmm. So that's the only Ford motor I've ever built, and I didn't build it. I helped Sid build it, but that's the only Ford motor I ever built. And so when we got that done, and Sid, right around Christmas is when he had that surgery to put the rod in his leg, I remember. And he had walked around hobbling on a cane even at the Derby, he was hobbling around because he didn't get out of the motorhome that year. He sat in the front seat, and we were somehow we ended up in the number 1 pit stall on the front straightaway, like where Royce Johnson used to pit. But we were pitted right there for that year for whatever reason. I don't remember why. But we were facing backwards, so Sid could sit in the motorhome and basically watch the whole race through 1 and 2.
Okay.
But we got that thing done, and I'll never forget. It was me, Scooter, Todd, Gary, and there was somebody else there. But we finished that car, the red car, up like the day before
you went to the hospital.
The day, yeah, because me and Scooter left there, and I'll never. We made it from 77th Avenue to Baptist Hospital in less than 10 minutes.
Oh wow!
Like we were hauling ass to get there. But that's because he was going for a doctor's appointment. When he went in for the doctor's appointment, they kept him.
Yep.
Okay. And he ended up dying 2 days later.
Yep, 2 days later.
God.
Yeah. And it was awful. So we were all distraught. I mean, this is our patriarch. This is the man our glue, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And we got the car done, finished it up, got it on the trailer that Sid had built, and took it to the racetrack. And Todd that night led every lap there was to lead and won it.
That's a great story.
Was that the night the fire? I drove through the fire the next night
at Mobile.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so. No, it wasn't. That was the season. No, that was the next season.
Okay,
that was with the Dingler motor when that happened.
I can't remember.
The Rouse motor had already blowed up at that point.
Yeah. So Todd wins. I go to Mobile the next night. Gonna make Sid proud.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what happened.
It wouldn't
happened. It wouldn't even crank.
Yeah, it wouldn't even get off the trailer.
Yeah, so
for whatever reason. And I'm talking the night before, the same group of cars that was at Pensacola was at the next night at Mobile.
Yeah, it wouldn't even crank.
And they couldn't touch us at Pensacola, and for whatever reason, it wouldn't even get off the trailer.
Sid knew something.
So the odd part Sid, and you may not know this, I don't think Sid ever witnessed me. Maybe one feature. I don't think he ever witnessed me winning a feature in his car. Most of the time, he was gone.
He was going to Colorado.
He would be gone, and I'd win the features and rip them off while they were out of town, and then he'd come back home. I couldn't hit a hog in the ass. Mm-hmm. It's the craziest thing, and I don't know if I was trying too hard or it meant too much, but I mean that's just it.
It's weird how those things work,
But yeah, he'd leave, and I'd seem to win, and
Sid was not somebody you ever wanted to disappoint. And going back to what we were just talking about, like I ain't never done drugs a day in my life or nothing like that, but I was always too scared to do something like that because I never wanted to disappoint him. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like if I'd have done something stupid and disappointed him, like it would kill me. You know what I mean? He meant that much to me. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. So Sid was huge.
Yeah.
The whole, we've left out an entire part, the whole Super Late model.
Well, so let's get back on track so we can kind of go. So going from racing with Sid, which you continue to race with Sid during this whole time, I know, but tell me about the Super Late model days and how all that came to be and all that kind of good jazz.
So
you got to give me where this sets in the timeline here.
All right. So this is
98.
This is 98, 99.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. 98,
before
99.
Before you went to Chicago.
Yep. So I am, my uncle, my mom's brother, he buys a Busch Grand National car, brand new one.
Okay.
And buys 2 engines,
That was a Laughlin chassis, wasn't it?
Yeah, brand new. Gary DeHart built it. Turnkey performance. I mean, this thing was immaculate. We're going to go to Daytona, right? Well, we were going to go to Daytona. You find out real quick, especially, I don't know how it is now, but I imagine it has not changed. So my uncle goes and buys all this stuff, and I don't guess he had really planned out or thought. I think he thought Daytona was like showing up at Five Flags. You buy a pit pass and race.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not how it works.
No.
So, so we got this brand new Busch car, and we got these engines and transmissions and all this stuff.
Was it still the way, like back? I know now you can't run a super speedway until you get so much of short track experience.
So that's not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is you got to buy a membership to be part of be a NASCAR team.
I'm sure that ain't
so. There's
cheap.
a dollar figure for that, and then if Jake, you're wanting to be my right front tire changer, well, you've got to be a NASCAR person, and Josh is the left rear guy. He's got to. So the entire thing is geared around. We're talking several $100,000 just to get go run one race back then. I mean, and we had no infrastructure.
Just to be allowed to.
Yeah, we had no infrastructure. And then not only that, going into what you were saying just now, you don't just show up at Daytona and race.
Right.
Cletus McFarland paid somebody, or ARCA must have different rules.
Something.
And I love to watch Cletus and his podcast and all that stuff. But hey, look, that was not in the cards for me in '99. Scooter Grice from where? So so they basically said, you need more experience, you guys, and rightfully so. We had no idea. So Todd Jones had a left-hander chassis, and we decided that we had 9-to-1 engines, which was the rule for Busch back then. And we were going to put said 9-to-1 engines in this left-hander chassis and go race at Five Flags. So we did. And I started building the car on my carport. I hadn't even told Sid about this yet because I'm driving for Sid, right? But I don't want to tell him, hey, I'm about to quit driving for you because you got modified. So my dumb brain doesn't even think, hey, maybe he's interested in helping or whatever, whatnot. So
you're worried about it piss him off.
Yeah, I don't want to upset him, right? And I don't want to stop. I don't want to burn a bridge. I don't want to do anything. So I hadn't said nothing. So I start building this car on the carport. Well, Sid didn't drive a bunch. He didn't drive a lot. He mainly stayed right there in his little 6 or 8 block, neighborhood. And he didn't get out of it. Yeah. And so I'm sitting there at the house, and it was Saturday, and I didn't go to the race car shop to work. And he knew that was strange. And he showed up at my house, and I'm sitting there with a late model tore apart on the carport. And I explained to him what's going on. He says, well, load this, come back, get the trailer, let's bring it to the shop. You can't do nothing here.
I bet you when he pulled up, your stomach.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want to upset him, but I had this opportunity. And so, so we end up building a super late model out of a 1990 model. And this is 98.
So he didn't even question it. He was just like, bring it to the shop.
He's ready to go.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He was hot to trot. Anything racing, he was ready to go.
So we take this car. It's a 90 model left-hander chassis. And we start assembling, and then my uncle buys a body for it, and Sid and I build this, that, and the other, and we get this thing together, and we go race the first race out. First asphalt super late model race was in December 4th, 1999. Snowflake 100, then known as the Pete Moore 100. And back then, everybody had super. There was no pros.
Crate motors wasn't a thing. They hadn't been invented yet.
So they basically, all the cars were trying for the Derby, and the ones that did not make it would finish, or would go into the 100 lap races, the preliminary race.
So it was basically a non-qualifier.
It was a non-qualifier hooligan race, but it was a 2-for-1 deal. Now the racetrack, going back to Timmy's episode, the racetrack was in sort of a limbo zone, and I think Don Grassman was running it in '99. I'm not sure. Somebody have to tell me, but so for whatever reason, of course I didn't qualify, for the Derby. I didn't know what I was doing. We're out there on box stock shocks and Goodyear tires, and everybody knew how to soak, and I didn't even know what soak was. And just a strange situation. And we get out there, and we qualify, and I think I went 17:30, but about what we would go today in outlaw cars, and which was nowhere near fast enough. I didn't know what I was doing, and so we qualified 16th for the hooligan race. And the more laps I made, the faster I got.
Mm-hmm.
And funny story, I remember, let's curve off this for a second. I remember following Bobby Gill in practice.
No doubt.
Yeah, and he didn't like that at all. Because I was
Bobby
trying to,
didn't?
I was trying to learn the line, in a supercar, and the only thing I ever drove was a dirt car around Five Flags.
Right.
Mhm.
So, there was no translation whatsoever. And I remember Bobby coming to find me, and he's like, "Don't you ever get that close to me?" And he was really, and I remember like, oh my God, I didn't know whether to be afraid of him or to be in awe that Bobby Gill was even talking to me. It was,
Yeah, he was back then. He was the man.
Yeah, Bobby Gill was the man.
Yeah.
So he came over there, and he was basically read me the riot act for following him too close, because he'd pack it into the corner, and I'd see if I could pack it just as close as he did, and I was trying to learn. And so anyway, we end up starting the Snowflake, and there was a bad wreck the very first lap, and I had a 7-inch triple disc clutch with a Muncie transmission that we had borrowed from Greg Young.
Holy cow!
Yeah, so Sid had borrowed it. With Greg, and Greg was, oddly enough, Greg and Daryl, his brother Daryl was my spotter.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never even had radios in a car before. Now I got a spotter.
Right.
So this is like being on Mars.
A
to me.
bunch of new stuff
Yeah,
at
this
one
is
time.
all brand new. So anyway, long story short, we get out there, and 16th, they have a bad wreck. Now I'm like 11th or 12th. And I just start working my way to the front. And there's some dogs in this race. Richie Beasley had a very nice car that Mr. Winston had paid for and got going. And Mike Harmon's car was in the race with Ted Christopher driving.
Holy cow!
There were, Ronnie Couture ends up winning the race. But I remember I'd gotten all the way up to second and was like a confident second.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember there was probably 10 to go, and I got Ronnie. I'd rooted him up a little. I didn't move him, but I'd got him out of his line, and I got under him coming off of 4 and had him passed.
Mm-hmm.
And my spotter, again, I don't know. Daryl would refer to me as Elvis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but he's like, "All right, Elvis, we don't need to go just yet. You need to save that. Don't pass him right now." And there was like 10 to go. And I look back, and I should have passed him. I should have not listened.
All right.
So going back to the beginning of the story, there's a wreck on the first lap. Well, I got caught in it a little bit. It didn't tear the car up at all. No scratches, but I got spun around, and the car was facing up the racetrack.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the transmission and the clutch, I burned the clutch up.
Trying to take back off.
Because I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I'd burned the clutch up. So I could not. So I'm racing this race with restarts and a Muncie transmission and no clutch. So I'm shifting it without a clutch on the restart.
Oh, wow.
I can't make a pit stop.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do anything because there's no clutch. And so I'm running this race, and we're up to second. I go to pass Ronnie. He tells me not to. So I let Ronnie get back down, getting into 1 and get in front of me. Critical mistake of my life.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a day that goes by that I don't think. And, maybe it wouldn't have translated into anything, but I honestly,
you could have won the race.
I could have won the race.
Mm-hmm.
And here's why. As a rule back then, and even some today, with 5 to go, there's going to be a caution.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What happens? Everybody goes back then. The snowball was a tire change
Mm-hmm.
race, or the Snowflake was. And everybody goes in and gets their 2 tires, and I'm a sitting duck.
Mm-hmm.
Ronnie stayed out. I stayed out. He had a buffer between me.
Right.
And
if you'd passed him, you'd had the buffer.
So top 4 cars transfer to the Snowball Derby in 99. Anyway, restarts occurs, and I'm a sitting duck, and I'm holding on for dear life. And they've got me sideways in every corner, but I'll go to my dirt track experience. I held on to it. I didn't lose it. I held my ground, and we end up, I got past, but they didn't wreck me.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished 4th.
You had to restart on the outside, didn't you? Second.
Yeah. There was, back then it was single file.
Okay.
There was no Alabama shuffle or
but you
Delaware
had fresh tires behind you.
But I had fresh tires behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't but like 6 cars on the lead lap. So I had all fresh tires behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, we end up getting shuffled around. I end up finishing 4th. Well, great. That means
we're in the Derby.
We're in the Derby.
Right.
Not so much. Whoever was running the race, whatever, They put Ted Christopher in my spot.
Damn.
And I didn't make the Derby. And Ted was a name, God love him. He's gone, died in a plane crash. But Ted Christopher and Mike Harmon obviously had more clout again than poor old Scooter from Pensacola. So, but Ronnie won the race, so he represented us well. And he ends up making the Derby. And, I just look back though, if I'd have just passed him, he'd have been the buffer and I could have rode off into the sunset.
Right.
And then, the next race we went to Op, and I think I was running. I didn't qualify so well. I was in the very back. I ended up working my way back to the front in the Rattler, and John Dykes, man, what a guy! But so what ends up occurring there? I think I was fourth on the last lap, and I get turned coming off of 4 to come to get the flag, and there was we had words after the race or whatever, and John come over. He says, "I want to make this right." He said, "You earned 4th place today, son." Mm-hmm. And he paid me 4th place money.
I'll be damned.
And Donald Long won. The next year we came back to the Derby, and I didn't have the success. The Rattler, I ran a lot of the race second to Ronnie Sanders, and this will be 2000. Mm-hmm. A lot of the race I ran second to Ronnie Sanders, but again, just inexperience and
Was that with the left-hander or with the Port City car?
that was with the new left-hander. We tore the first one up in Mobile, got cut in half.
Yeah.
Over in some of the 150 lap races over there, I got torn up over there. Again, that was a situation I shouldn't have been in, but I got myself where I was the only person left in the pits with tires. Mm-hmm. So I'd learned my lesson, and I've got tires in the pits, and everybody made their move to get tires. Well, I didn't. I stayed out, and another caution fell. Mm-hmm. And when that second caution fell, I would have been able to have tires, and I ended up getting wrecked and turned sideways, and that left-hander got destroyed, cut in half. I mean, like literally like Michael Waltrip at Bristol. Yeah. It was destroyed. Yeah. They brought it in with 2 different wreckers. Yeah. And there wasn't a car in the middle. It was cut in half. Mm-hmm. And so we had to build another car. Pretty much just, I don't know. I had a good time, an awesome time. I got to race with people.
So how did that wreck happen? What exactly happened with that wreck?
Somebody went through the grass. I'm not going to get into how it all happened, but a very well-known driver went through the grass, getting into one, come across my nose, and turned me sideways. So looking to the top of the track, if you're sitting in the car, sitting duck, and the last place car come along and hit me.
That's always the last place car. I swear.
Yeah.
Always. Every single time.
It was like, it seemed like 2 months went by, and he comes by, and my car was all black, and Mobile was very dark, and got KO'd and hurt me bad. Pretty sure it broke my ribs on the right side. It's the worst I've ever been hurt in a race car, knock on wood. But had to drive. It wasn't nobody. It was me and Thumper, and Thumper was probably 8 at the time, and Sid, and then one guy, my dad's friend John, went with us just so we'd have a crew person there. And I think it was a 150 lap race, but it was a single set of tires. Mm-hmm. And we ended up having to build another car, and we had some success. I mean, I made some awesome qualifying laps, for what we had, but it just never materialized in anything.
That's what really. It sounds like. It might have been something if the cards would have felt different.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's several things I can look back on now, and I should have changed, and but again, I didn't know. I come off the dirt tracks,
right?
And there's not many people that I can think of in recent years. I don't know about before my time, but other than me, Todd, and Curtis.
Yeah, that's about it, really.
There's not a lot of people that go
back and forth on a consistent basis.
Yeah. And Todd and I probably have done it more frequently than anyone. Mm-hmm. I like to say I'm biracial. I like to race on either surface. Mm-hmm. yeah. So, no pun intended, but it doesn't matter. I like to race, either one, any car, it doesn't matter.
Hey, Josh.
Yes, sir.
We've started talking a lot about the start of the 2025 racing season. Do you know what other season to start?
What season is that, Jake?
That's going to be tax season.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And Steph over at Blackwater Bookkeeping can help you get your return filled without even leaving your house.
Oh, that would be nice.
Steph not only does taxes, but she can also help your small business with all your bookkeeping needs. From startups to cleanups, she can get it done. Give her a call or text today, 850-290-3043.
So, Scooter, going back, coming back from the Mobile and this and that, and then coming back and running the Derby and stuff, you were talking about how you didn't have a tire soaker back then. And, but I mean, everybody back then was soaking tires,
Yeah, tire soak was you got to know we didn't have shocks. There wasn't there was no JRI. There was no Ernest Performance. Those trailers didn't exist.
All right. There wasn't even Penske shocks back then, was there?
Well, there might have been Penske's, but we had Rocco Cheater's Speed Shop and the Bryants.
No doubt.
Yeah, there was no, and then you bought your fuel from Mr. Rex,
right.
And that's what was there.
Right.
But everybody was huge. Everybody was soaking tires. And so we didn't know how to soak tires, and we had heard the story, similar to what, if you guys listen to Kenny Wallace's, he touched on it a little bit. Back in the day, they would soak them in the hotel room.
Yeah.
They'd put them in the bathtub with xylene and acetone and just whatever.
Never invited back to Motel 6.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure those hotels on Highway 29, because that's all there was back then.
Right.
I'm pretty sure they had to cut the bathtub out because it had to eat the
Oh,
porcelain and enamel or whatever if it was on the wall or
they probably didn't know what was going on in the bathtub.
God awful. I mean, because I don't know if you guys ever been around tire soaking.
Oh yeah,
but it stinks.
No,
it stinks bad. But so we get the idea. Well, my granddad, knowing that, I'm like, oh, we got to have a way to soak these tires. Well, we at the junkyard. And my granddad still was running a junkyard at this time.
Mm-hmm.
He had an old bathtub that we would
wash your hands on right there outside.
Yeah, it would sit outside. It was nasty as hell. But
had rainwater in it.
Yeah. But so he had this old bathtub, and I'm like, well, they used to soak tires in the bathtub, Sid. We'll go get that bathtub and we'll soak us some tires in it. So I do. My granddad's laughing his ass off the whole time. So we get that old bathtub. Yeah, everybody had a rotisserie. Scooter didn't have a rotisserie. Okay. Yeah, so me and Sid's trying to soak tires, well, the damn things won't stand up.
Right.
They're falling all over the place, and you got soft spots here and there and yonder, and it did not go the way. It wasn't as easy as Kenny made it to sound on the Kenny Wallace show.
Right.
It wasn't that easy for me for whatever reason, but I was doing something wrong.
Right.
But so nonetheless, we tried that. We had xylene, and we were trying to soak them in xylene, and was it called something purple?
Well, Sid's recipe was xylene, a cap full of transmission fluid, and some mineral spirits. And don't ask me how I know this recipe.
Yeah, so you got that fail pretty bad.
I think there might be some notes.
Yeah.
I think we used Grip 2 and xylene because, again, Sid didn't have any.
Right.
He didn't have a recipe. We didn't know.
There was no hot lap back then or nothing like that.
No, there was something. That's what I'm saying. I think it was called Grip.
Okay.
Or something.
Yeah.
So what we ended up doing is we went to the dollar store and bought a bunch of cheap towels, and we got Sid's wife to sew the ends of the towels together. And we took the towel and took two towels to go around the tire, and you take the towel and you wrap it around the tire a long ways, and you tape the towel down to the tire. Then you take saran wrap and you make several laps of saran wrap around the tire.
Okay.
Just like the dirt guys do to this day. Mm-hmm. Kind of makes me wonder why they do that.
Right.
But anyway, they make several laps around them to this day, or several laps around the tire, and then you tape the saran wrap to the sidewall of the tire. Then you take and cut a slit in the top of your saran wrap at the just 12 o'clock position. Mm-hmm. Pour your chemical in there, and then you put tape over the slit you cut, and then you rotate the tire over 15 minutes, like from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and so on, until you've made revolutions all throughout the day. The problem is you about got to sleep at the shop.
Oh, 100%
to do this. Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's like set an alarm clock, and every 15 or 20 minutes you got to move this tire. So that's how we soaked the first time I did it.
Okay.
And we went out and went $16.95.
Now I've heard this story from Sid and from you over the years and from other folks, but I believe these tires would stick to the wall.
Oh, so the durometer was like, so it was so bad when you pushed the car,
Yeah,
it looked like you did a burnout.
Like
It did. It looked like you went out and did a burnout.
Looked like you pulled melted cheese apart when you
Yeah,
were rolling
that's
it.
what- I mean, it was bad. And so the old
Sid
tires,
always said that you could take and put your thumbprint like that, and you could see your
fingerprint.
Yeah.
You could
Oh,
see your
God.
see your thumbprint.
These,
your
so these are
fingerprint.
qualifying tires.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sid said,
Yeah,
Sid
absolutely.
said you could have taken these tires and stuck them on the wall and come back 20 minutes later, and they'd still be stuck to the wall.
So we go 1695 and missed the show,
Oh, wow.
right? And missed it by we were the first car out, so we were the 31st fastest qualifier. And so I started on the pole of the last chance race. Well, I can't race on these tires.
They won't make it.
They're not going to make it. So we went and bought another set of tires. Well, I didn't have time to soak them again or to soak them not
Everybody
quite
else
as much.
had already pre-soaked.
Everybody else already had tires.
Right.
And all my intention in this whole thing, my whole goal for the Snowball Derby is just to put my name in the book.
Right.
You
Right.
know? So I just want to be part of the people that's tried and been successful to make the race. I don't have to win. I just, my victory is to make it.
Right.
And so we didn't have tires. So I went and bought a green set of tires and put on the car to start on the last chance race. Well, it was very cold that night, and I buzzed the tires a little bit on the start of the race, got wrecked before I got to the flag stand.
Holy cow.
And that was the last time I tried for the Snowball Derby. So, but yeah, it was kind of a weird situation to be in, but soaking was just a part of life.
Yeah.
Back then.
I mean, they had some stuff back then that would for real make your babies be born naked and glowing.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'm kind of glad we can't do it these days because there's so much other technology and it's already so much goes into getting the car set up and figure things out and everything else. That'd just be something else.
It honestly, environmentally,
Right.
we don't need to be doing that because racers are not the most environmental people in this world.
No.
I know we try to be, but when it comes to being in a hurry and doing this, that, and the other, there's going to be a few bad eggs that maybe don't take care of the chemical the way they should.
Right.
And that's my thing for wishing it would go away. I'm not a tree hugger or anything like that, but that's some nasty stuff.
Yeah.
Like for real, to make your babies be born naked and glowing green. Like it's nasty.
Yeah.
And really and truly, if we want to get technical, all them years that Sid, worked at the transmission shop and had his hands in solvent and mineral spirits and this and that, probably is what made him have cancer later on in life. If truth be known.
So you just struck another family. You just struck another memory. So I cut my hand really bad building a body one time. Like
I know where you're going with this.
I needed
Go ahead.
stitches. I mean, it was bad. And Sid, let me look at it. I mean, I don't want to look because I got a weak stomach. I'll throw up. And it was bad. It was a flap, right? So he looks at it and he says, come with me. Just give me your hand. And we go over there and he dunks my hand in that transmission mineral spirit / whatever else was in it.
The parts washer.
Look,
Burn a little bit?
It was a parts washer. If you took the chemical that was in this thing and you kind of panned it like you were panning for gold, it had flakes in it of all kinds of stuff, and it was brown. It wasn't pretty clear. Yeah, it was nasty.
Well used.
Yeah. But I tell you what, that wound, I've cut myself more often than not. I've been sewn up a bunch. You can't tell where that wound was, but you can see all the ones where I had stitches.
So to hit on that, me and Sid were putting the Power Glide. It was a 2-day show at Milton, and I wish I could find that old picture, but Sid had taken the body off of the late model. We had a TNT late model at the time, and he had taken the body off of that and put it on the modified, cut it down and put it on there. And Todd was driving at the Winter Nationals. And the Friday night show, we'd burn a transmission up. Well, we had another power. This is before we were running Brins and Burts and stuff like that. And so we had another one on the shelf ready to go in the car, but we had to change it Saturday morning. So I get there bright and early Saturday morning, and me and Sid we got the car on the lift, and it's still dirty. And that was one thing that Sid did not allow. He did not allow a car that was dirty to come back in his shop. It would sit on the pad until it was clean, then it could come back in. But this particular Saturday, we were in a hurry, So we were changing this transmission out, and I was 16, 17 years old. I was pretty strong back then. And I picked the transmission up, had it over my head, and had it on the dowel pins or whatever. And Sid was trying to start the bolts in the bell housing. And I was holding it there. I was in a bind, but I was holding it. Well, Sid dropped one of the bolts, and he reached down, picked it up. Well, when he come back up, he hit his head on the bottom of that transmission pan. And I'm talking, it would have knocked me out. I'm talking, hit it hard. You know what I mean? And he didn't say a whole lot. He's, you know what I mean? And he got the bolt started, and he's blood running down the side of his ear and everything else. And I'm like, Pop, hurry up, you know what I mean? And I'll try to help him. Well, he walked over to that same parts washer Scooter's talking about and wringed out an old mineral spirits rag and rubbed his head with it like this, and then went right back to work. Toughest old man I've ever seen in my whole life. Just tough as nails.
Built different back then.
So, well, Scooter, you know, we've kind of come full circle here to the modern times. We did, you know, we've talked about Sid and this and that, but we lost Sid in March of 2009, and we've all kind of progressed since losing Pop. But kind of get in, you know, in the last couple of years, you know, you've raced with Gary after that and in the modifieds, and then raced for me some in the modifieds and stuff. But let's talk about some modern day stuff. I mean, tell me about this new car that you got.
So we have I guess it's a 2022 FLF Outlaw chassis built by Tim Curry. Beautiful car.
It really is. It's
nicer
a super
than anything.
nice car.
Now,
Finest thing I've ever seen or been around.
Sid built a nice car.
Oh, yeah.
We're not taking anything, but Sid would be like, holy cow.
Right.
This guy, so the amount of time that Tim Curry puts into a car, I would say is unrivaled in the racing industry.
Oh, 100%. You can't find a rivet that ain't spaced perfectly on that thing.
I mean, so, and the funny story about the car and how I came about it, a guy named Charlie Brown, well, actually, we'll start with Cody Brusso posted it.
I
on Facebook, and I think the original cost of the car was there, which was a lot more than I had. Right when she posted it for Charlie, and I was sitting at my computer, and this car had been on the computer for 4 or 5 months, seemed like, and I called my wife. I said, "Baby," I said, "I want to show you something." I said, "This is totally just I know I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. I feel like I got to." I said, come in here and look at this car. I said, if you were a race car, this is what you'd look like. Right? Which is probably not a statement you should make to your wife. But she's like, why don't you just go buy it? I see you in here looking at it all the time. And I said, well, I'm just getting ideas for when I build one. She said, why are you building a car? We've just started a business. We had an elderly grandparent we were caring for. We got a lot of life happening at my house. Why are you trying to build a race car? Well, because I like building my own car because of Sid. You need to just not worry about that. Take the money you were going to build a car. And I'd been saving up, and I had a dollar figure nowhere near what this guy was asking. I had a dollar figure saved up, and she said, just call the guy and ask him. It says make offer. I said, yeah, but you don't want to insult nobody.
Right.
You know, and what I had in my book, if somebody called me and offered me, we'll just say 10,000 less than I had it listed for, that's an insult.
Right.
And so anyway, nonetheless, I called the guy.
I can't make that phone call. Josh can make that phone call all day.
Yeah, Josh.
But I can't make that phone call.
So, and I probably should have had Josh call him because I probably would have even done better. But nonetheless, I'm like, you know what? I've been told no for worse things.
Right.
So
that's the worst that can happen is they say no. And
Yeah.
you don't know unless you ask.
Or cuss you out. Well, hell, I don't know him. So,
Right.
it doesn't matter. He could cuss me out. But he says, so I called the guy and I said, what do you want for the car? He says, I need you to make me an offer. I said, well, look, dude, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Okay. I said, because I've saved up for several, honestly, years. Honestly, I even had a hope chest of parts that I'd been saving. And I had sold my dirt modified, which wasn't worth much. I think I sold it for $4,000. Was it
$4,500?
$4,500, whatever. So that gave me, and I'm not going to get into the dollar figure, but it gave me a dollar figure where I'm making this guy an offer, and I will say that it was about $10,000, if not $12,000 less than he was asking. And the guy says, I tell you what, I just bought an offshore boat. I need this thing moved. And I said, well, I got this much money. He says, I tell you what, you bring me this much money, keep $1,000 for yourself to spend. Cause we didn't even, if I'd have gave him everything I had, we wouldn't have had money to even stay in a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and just like I said, we had just started a business, so times were tough. I did not need to be buying a race car, but the guy took it, and the rest is history. I have an FLF car that I am super proud of.
And for listeners that if you've never seen this car, this thing is so fun. The coolest thing about this car to me is that I don't know if it's powder coated clear coat or painted clear coat or whatever it is, but this car is clear. So it looks like the bare metal chassis, but it's clean bare metal.
Yep. Polished.
And you can see every weld, and it's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, the guy took the time to, I can't remember what machine turn is the word. Machine turn the sheet metal for the footbox. I mean, time.
Yeah.
Kind of like a fisheye.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and then the chromoly that the car is built out of is brushed.
Yeah.
Chromoly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you've got brushed nickel fixtures in your house,
Yep. That's what it looks like.
that's what
it
the
looks
car
like.
looks like.
Mhm.
Welded brushed nickel is
And
what
you
the
can't
chassis looks like.
find a flaw in this chassis
No, it's
anywhere.
beautiful.
Yes, it's straight. And no.
So for the listener, if you're listening, this is the 234 Outlaw car that runs at Pensacola, just so everybody knows which car we're
Flat
talking about.
black, blue.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Got the wrap on it.
Yeah, so we're proud of it. It's we call the car Felina
Mm-hmm.
after Marty Robbins' song. So
Mm.
my son Gavin kind of gave it that name, and then she's been good. We've had a lot of motor trouble.
Mm-hmm.
When we got the car, we had an engine with it and took it out there. Got thrown out the first night, but we were just trying to get to the racetrack.
Right.
I had if you would have told me that I would go out there and lead 19 of 25 laps or whatever it was we led,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would have, number one, Randy Bryant had to convince me not to start in the rear because I was just going to start in the rear and ride around.
Right.
But he's like, man, you guys are doing well. So I went ahead and started up front.
Mm-hmm.
And or not up front. Yeah, we did. We were on the
started
pole.
up front, yeah.
Yeah, they rolled a 4.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we
we started on the
fourth.
pole.
So, and then we led the first 19 laps,
Mm-hmm.
and the car is really good. I would venture to say that it's probably the best race car I've ever had at Pensacola. Right out of the gate, I wouldn't hesitate to let anyone drive it in a single car setting.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it drives so easy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just put together. And then Mike Garvey, man, money well spent.
Oh yeah.
I can't buy the experience that he is put into the car when he was setting it up, and
He's been good to us. I mean, Mike has really helped us and been good to us.
yeah, and for what it's worth, I mean the way the car drives and handles is all a testament to his expertise.
Mm-hmm.
He really is. He probably is the catalyst for what's going to be a very successful car. If I can ever get the cobwebs knocked off of me, and we can get an engine that won't lay down on me.
Going back to that first night, that was my first experience with it. And to tell from my side, Josh calls me and says, hey, we're racing this car, come out there. And I come out there and my jaw dropped first time I seen it at the racetrack. And we get in there and that's Josh. I said, I know Scooter has asphalt experience. And I didn't know anything about you at this point.
Yeah.
And I said, how long's it been? And Josh said, it's been a while. I can't remember exactly what you told me.
It'd been several years.
10
So-
years.
yeah.
It's been 10
So we're
years.
starting on the pole. My expectation, again, not knowing your
Right.
your experience at the time, we'll go mid-pack or something like that. We'll fall back and you take off and we're leading and me and Josh are looking at each other and or he's spotting and I can't remember. I think it was me and Gavin. Somebody in the pits were looking at each other like, eyes wide, like, holy, are we doing this right now?
Yeah.
And then you lead and you lead and you lead and we end up finishing second. And it was a crazy moment.
Yeah. And I mean, look, we got thrown out.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's just put that right out there. I didn't go to the racetrack to cheat. I just went to make laps.
Right.
Well, we
And
got
but
thrown out fair and square, but I
Yeah.
don't think
I
if we'd
got
have had,
no argument with that. That's
Right.
their rule,
but
So,
if we'd have had the legal thing in there, I don't think it'd have been any different.
that's what I was getting ready to say. I don't think it would have mattered.
Right.
Right.
If my motor that we purchased would have had the seals and oddly enough, that engine was legal the year before last.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that would have been the 23 season.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the 20 that engine was legal. So I didn't.
You didn't know.
Well, I can't say I didn't know the rules were there, right?
Mhm.
But I can say that
We didn't expect to go to the tech shed.
I didn't expect number one to go to the tech shed. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't expect number two. I didn't realize that having been out of racing, especially and had never crate raced,
Mhm.
I didn't realize that they would not tech the
Mhm.
engine. I thought, okay, it doesn't have seals, but he'll check it.
Yeah, we'll tear it down.
They'll tear it down.
Yeah, that was where you come from.
Yeah, that was my argument. I was like, man, I've got the tools right here. I'll put the crankshaft on
That
the scale
was so
pad
fun.
over there.
That was so funny. So Scooter's like just cool, calm, collected. And I got to commend you. You were probably the coolest and calmest person in that situation about to get thrown out your first night back. I'd have been beside myself. But you're just cool, calm, collected, nonchalant. Josh is literally trying everything he can do to get this tech man to tear this motor down or let us go.
Yeah,
Or,
man, I had my salesman shoes on that
Josh
night.
was just literally everything he could throw at it. And Scooter, it finally just said, "Josh, it's fine. Josh, we're cool. We'll take the DQ."
Yeah, what Josh has got to understand, the victory for me was, man, I hadn't drove in 10 years.
Right.
I can still do this. I'm 48 years old.
Right.
And I can still.
Nothing was going to ruin the night for you.
So I remember before my granddad died, we'd been in and out of racing. And I was really worried about not being able to, because I've seen people leave and they just never come back the same.
Right.
I don't think that happened to me.
No.
I feel like that I picked up just like I was. Mm-hmm. It didn't change. And he told me, he said, you won't ever forget. One of the last conversations that we had, he said, you won't forget. So, yeah. But sorry, I'm getting choked up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It bothered me, not being able to race. But when I got back, that first night, it was definitely a victory for me just to be able to compete again and have some success. Mm-hmm. That was a successful night. Just my life had went full circle. I've been in and out of racing for 35 years. I can't say that I've raced for 35 years. Mm-hmm. I can say that I've been in and out because I had to go to Chicago and I did, life took me in a lot of different directions to get me back to where I'm at and to be able to come back and compete.
Well, racing was completely different.
Well, yeah. And then, there was just a lot of life. There was a lot of life things. I had kids. I coached high school football. My son, my oldest and my youngest were very good football players. My middle son's an aspiring fireman. At the time, there was just a lot going on and I had to be a dad, so I couldn't race like family I wanted first. To. Yeah. Family came first. And, I would spend my last dollar on those boys, especially, Gavin starts, he starts showing signs of some extraordinary talent in the 9th grade. Like he's in track, he's running against like premier athletes and making it to the finals as a 9th grader. And I have people pulling me to the side. Hey, you need to do this. You need to do that. So I pretty much benched racing the entire time that, from the time he went into high school till all the way he was out and into college football. So that once he was done, my wife, she was okay with it, but I didn't know. I think the biggest thing that night, going back to last year and that first night out, I was just glad to be racing. I felt blessed. Mm-hmm. I felt like a presence of God, patting me on the back saying, good job.
Right. That was a good night.
It really was. And I mean, I was impressed. I can't lie to you. I was spotting for you, but I was impressed. It's like, damn, we got this.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to get that first. So I've never won a race at Five Flags.
Right.
Won a race everywhere in the world, but can't win at my own hometown. I don't know what that is, but, won a bicycle race.
Yeah.
Told that story before.
Yeah.
When I was like 9. Funny one. But yeah, I can't get that elusive victory and boy, I can snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory at Five Flags. I'm not kidding. So yeah, there's been several races, woulda, coulda, shoulda won. We've had one where we had the fastest car in 3 counties and get out there and make an adjustment to the engine without using the proper tools and retard the timing and it won't even get out of its own way. And I ended up losing. We was fast qualifier.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. That was with the vintage car. But.
Yeah. So there's that. And then there's been the one where, we win practice. That's such a awful thing to say. So you run well in practice and you're the fastest car, and then you have some potluck. I mean, the battery terminal melted off.
I remember that.
Yeah, melted off going out for qualifying. It wouldn't run. I ended up starting back in the pack, and you just, I mean, in a 30-lap race, you can't start in the back. You can't. You got to be going.
With Mother Nature doing all these crazy things here lately, especially the winter storms, you may have noticed your curtains blowing in the breeze every time the wind blows. If that is the case, give Window World of Pensacola a call. They specialize in non-impact and impact-rated windows for all residential needs. They're located at 10108 North Palafox Street in Pensacola, or you can give them a call at 850-484-9998. We'll be happy to help you with all of your window needs. You know, your luck at Five Flags, and if anybody's listening that knows how to change your luck at Five Flags, please contact us at theshorttrackshakedown@gmail.com. We'd be happy to speak with you about it. But
Yeah.
one thing, we had to change engines, and some of the people that are listening here have seen us changing engines this last year at the Derby. We had a motor go bad after practice and qualifying, and we changed it on pit road. But that is the second time that I've changed an engine on pit road for you. And the first time was when he come home from Chicago. We had an engine. Matter of fact, I think I still got the crankshaft of that motor. But he had an engine that was in Sid's car. And this is a hilarious story. And it broke in practice. The motor blowed up and it broke. I mean, everything broke the block. I think the only thing that was safe, everything was the crankshaft and the intake was the only thing that was not broke on this thing. Well, we had an engine called Old Faithful, and Old Faithful, everybody and their brother had run. And we get this engine, we come back, and they've got this engine, the old engine out, and we're putting it in, and the old thing would not crank. I mean, it would not crank. We like
it was tired.
Yeah, it was tired. I was the person that run it the last. I think I'd run it 300 degrees, but I mean, it was tired. It was old. Mm-hmm. Well, Sid. This was I think this was 06 or 07. I think I was still in high school when this happened. But anyway, Sid was riding around standing on the Nerf bar, and me and Thumper and Gary and Scooter's in the car, and we're all pushing this thing around the quarter mile at Five Flags. And Scooter's trying to jerk it in, because we done killed the battery trying to crank this thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we're pushing it, and Sid is riding on the frame wheel, pouring transmission fluid down the carburetor, trying to get the rings to seal so it would crank. And we did get it cranked up, and Scooter pulls around to qualify, and barely made qualifying, and he's sitting there, and in qualifying we're sitting there watching it, and water is rolling out the exhaust pipes as he's going out there, and we qualified an 8th or something like that.
It was crazy. That was a Derby, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was the race right before the Derby. It was like that. Okay. Yeah, it was
Champion.
They say engines run the best right before they blow up.
Oh, I don't know. That thing hauled ass, and we started the race that night. I think the engine did blow up.
Yeah, it's scattered.
But
so I want to go back to changing engines at the Derby, because I think this is a funny thing that people would like to know. I've never seen a racing operation decide to change engines, the method we used to decide if we wanted to change engines or not. Do y'all remember?
Yeah. Now, look, I wasn't part of this.
Yeah,
if y'all remember,
you walked away.
I was like, look, y'all make the decision. I was ready to put it in the truck. I was very frustrated.
This is a Thumper Grice special.
Right.
I think we either played rock, paper, scissors, or we flip a quarter.
Well, so we went 2 out of 3. We played rock, paper, scissors or something like that, and then that's told us to change the motor.
This is a few hours before the race.
Right, yeah. This is like 2.5, 3 hours. And so I had a quarter in my pocket, and I said, all right, heads, heads, we race it. Tails, we change the motor, because everybody calls heads, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I flipped it, and it landed on tails. And I said, all right, 2 out of 3. Yeah. And I flipped it again, and it landed on tails again. I said, well, we changed an engine. So that was the good Lord trying to tell us, hey, y'all need to change engines here.
Tested the rear suspension on my Players Ranger. We took the engine, threw it out.
Yeah, you boys, y'all worked your butts off. And
it was a team effort. There was a lot of people that was helping with that.
Honestly, I have a little. I wish I could have the race back. I really do. Mm-hmm. I feel like it meant too much to me, and I felt like I had to do something big for you guys because you worked so hard, and I should have ran the race differently. Looking back, I just got to get myself back like I was, get some seat time. It's not the ability, it's the mindset I need to be in to win races.
Well, the greatest thing about all that is what you just said is we got all season this year, which brings me to my next point. What is our plans for this season?
I'd like to race as much as I can, and that means anything I can get in. I don't care whose it is or what it is.
Right.
I mean, I drove Gavin's Crown Vic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
and that thing will run too.
So yeah, so I don't really, I'm not bashful about it. I feel like that laps in anything is better than no laps at all. And when we get to Pensacola, there's just, I think I need to get myself reacclimated to the race experience and just being around and what to do. And it's not about passing. Obviously I've got that figured out. It's not about the line around the racetrack. I'm pretty good at that. I think it's just getting my mind, on what I need to do in certain scenarios. So I think this year I want to race as much as I can. I'd like to make the first race. Got a lot of work.
Yeah. Got a half a body to hang.
Well, I got a lot of work outside of the race car. We've got.
You got to pay for it.
We got to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, I've got to pay for it.
Right.
And I've been blessed with an awesome opportunity for my business, and it's carrying me further and further from the house.
Right.
Found myself on the east coast of Florida last week.
Right.
So I don't know if that means I'm doing a good job or maybe I'm cheap or whatever it is, but I enjoy what I'm doing every day. But ultimately, that's how we're paying for the racing. So I've got to figure out the balance, and if that means you boys working on the car, and we figure out some means of getting it there, I'm gonna have to do that because I don't have the time right now building this business to put into it the way I want to, but I want to race.
Right.
But I've got to build the business to race.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So I'm in a catchy spot.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Catch 22.
And building a business is a all your time ordeal.
Yeah. So all options are on the table. I will race anything, anytime, anywhere in this big, wide, wonderful world.
Mm-hmm.
It does not matter.
You want to leave your phone number in case somebody wants to call you?
They can contact me. Hit me on Facebook.
Right.
Whatever
Hit
they
him on
want to do.
Facebook, or to tell you what, you can
I'll tell
contact us,
You
and
can
we'll give it
contact
you
them,
with them.
whatever.
Anything from a tricycle to a super late model. Huh?
I'll run a foot race.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm pushing 50, but I'm in pretty good shape.
Well, so and I asked Ricky this last week, and I don't necessarily think you're an old timer even at 50, but you've been around the sport quite a while, and you're a historian like I am with racing. And we'll kind of end the podcast like this, and I kind of want to see and pick your brain and see where you go with this. But what do you see the future of racing being in the Pensacola area and the Gulf Coast area, and where would you like to see it go?
Well, I mean, I think the elephant in the room right now is there's so many different distractions
Right.
from racing that sort of has gotten you. I mean, you got to make the decision. My wife and I last night, I kind of wanted to go to Southern and watch the modifieds, because that IMCA thing,
Clash on the Coast.
the Clash on the Coast deal, those guys put on an awesome show.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to watch, and we both can enjoy it when it's fun to watch. Nobody wants to go watch a caution every 2 laps.
Right.
So I think we've got to address, how to get the casual fan more interested in racing. That's the $1 million question, right? One of the things, and I'll say this, and everybody's got their own opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got too many divisions, or maybe we don't. Maybe we, okay, you don't want to race every week. Maybe we want to race twice a month. Well, hell, we got 8 divisions, right? So let's have 4 divisions this week and 4 more next week. And then by the way, that 4 more for next week goes and runs at Montgomery.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's dirt track, they go run at Baker.
Right.
I
Have
think
a rotation. Get all the racetracks on the same schedule and rotate them.
With that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at this Crown Vic thing. I mean, we
It's
brought
blown up.
there's I honestly just so not that I predicted the future, but so one of the things I learned in Rockford, and I don't remember where I saw this. It might not even been Rockford Speedway. It was somewhere up there though. They had a 4-door only class.
Mm-hmm.
If it didn't have 4 doors, you didn't race it.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't, and that's what it was. And it was basically old Caprices, and it wasn't Crown Vics then, but it certainly could be now.
Old 4-door Malibu, stuff like that.
So I posted, and I think James Patrick or someone hit me with a memory where I said something like in 2011 about this. And then it's like I predicted the future with the Crown Vics. And I'm not taking credit by no means, but because I'm just repeating what I saw somewhere. But I think the ultimate thing is we got to get people interested in racing again. We got to get the kids interested in racing again. I'm sorry. I know that I'll ruffle feathers. Look, I'm not even an engine guy, but I race carbureted cars. We are going to have to figure out how the tuner division stuff, and I don't mean Stinger cars. I mean Corvettes, Mustangs, not Corvettes, Camaros, Mustangs, Challengers. That I think that's an untapped something that needs to be discovered. There certainly aren't any metric cars laying around anymore. And if you get one, you're paying $1,500 for
cash for clunkers. Ended all that up. Yeah.
So we've wiped out just about everything there is to race. Rear wheel drive, American GT sports cars is something that's pretty prominent. I mean, it's weird, but I'm just trying to think of ways to get the kids involved. This younger generation. My friend Thomas Taylor, his son John, has built an LS truck out of an old OBS Chevrolet. He's got a YouTube thing. You guys should check it out. Man, why do we not have an LS class? Can somebody tell me?
I don't know, but the motors are everywhere. They're easy to build.
Well, they're $500 to $800 at any junkyard. You can find them, and you
can put a carburetor on them.
Yes,
you can put a carburetor intake on them.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. I mean, we have the technology.
And even if it was EFI, going back to what Ricky Brooks last week, we have the ability to check if a car is tuned or not.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of people around here do not believe that, but I can tell you, I can. You give me a stock computer that I can flash and save the file on that we know it's stock,
right?
And then I can go pull every car that has that computer in it and compare the file.
But the means, though, I mean, so the problem, I should say, not the means. The problem is your tech guy and Ricky and I have a great relationship. Ricky's probably the most progressive of any tech man out there. Okay.
Right.
But at the same time, a lot of these old cats are guys from the 80s and 90s. They don't want to learn. I don't want to learn.
Right.
I do well to send send an email.
Right.
Yeah. I don't want to learn all this, but the fact of the matter is, if we want to preserve what's there, we're going to have to find other avenues to get people involved, or there will be no racetracks to go to.
And we're also going to have to, it's with technology, you either got to get with it or you're going to get left behind.
Well, absolutely. I mean, when you watch the Discovery Channel drag race stuff, what are they doing? They're tuning that car with a computer, with a laptop. Look, I'm not a rules guy. I feel like that, I'm not real sure why we make some. It's like, I've heard the grand debate about the Super Series seals versus the Ricky Cordell Speedway Series seals and all this, that, and the other. And I don't have a dog in the fight. I just think it's awful foolish, for either a party that's involved to stamp an engine and go, hey, you can't bring that to my racetrack because it's got the wrong person's seal on it.
As hard as it is to get cars and car counts now, especially at that level, man, as long as it's got a seal on it, let's race. You know what I mean? Let's race.
Why are we killing car class with politics?
Right.
Well, again, we need to be in a growth period for our sport to survive.
Right.
Okay. Football and baseball and basketball, those sports will always be there because they stay in a continual growth pattern from the time kids are able to play till they have to retire at an old man.
Right.
So racing, though, I think we eat our own young in some cases.
100%. Yeah.
We're ruling out stuff and we'll just use my stuff for an example. I've got an engine right now and I'm not bashful about saying it. I had it rebuilt. It's a crate engine, or I had it assembled. It's a crate engine, and I need to have the engine gone through. This is why we changed the engine at Snowball.
Yeah.
I have one option in Pensacola.
Right.
One option. And then my name's not Bubba Pollard. I can't call Robbie White and go, hey, I need my engine fixed next week so I can race. He's going to tell me to go pound sand. I'm not, it's just, you've hurt the little guy,
right?
With the seal making rules and, dang it, if we're going to have crate engines, and I hate to say this, Gary Mayer, good friend of mine, brings this point up because we had this debate last week. I'm like, if you have a crate engine and it blows up, you should have to go get another crate engine. And oh, by the way, there should be no Ford.
Right.
And I have a Ford. I'm hurting myself by saying what I'm saying.
Right.
There should be, dang it, if we're going to have crates, and everybody should have the GM 604 crate, and it better have the GM seals in it.
Right.
And if it don't have them, go get you another one. Sorry about your luck, buddy.
Well, I think that's the only real way to keep them, keep it honest. But like what me and Ricky were talking about last week, the crate engine itself, and the reason that I don't agree with it, and Sid didn't like it, you know what I mean, when they first started coming out, when Sid was alive, but they killed the little man. They killed the Frank Butler machine shops. They killed the Crenshaw machine shops. They kill all these little guys because, yes, there's machine shops out there that just do civilian style work, whether it be a tractor head or this or that, whatever. But most
city machine.
Right. But most machine shops that are around rely on racers, or did rely on racers to keep them going. You know what I mean? And that's, especially in a racing community like this, that was
Cody
huge.
Johnson.
Yes.
He only did racing engines.
Yeah, look at Mr. Buddy Miller, you know what I mean? Or Lyle Smith or Dale Forlan or any of them. I mean, they rely on us racers to keep them going and pay their bills. But every time that we take a class, such as the modified class, that was one of the last classes still around that a crate motor wasn't a thing. We all built our motors, or you know what I mean? And we had a particular set of rules. But now that they've introduced that, you see more people going towards the crate motor because it's clearly an advantage over the built motor. But now all of those engines ain't being built at our local machine shop. You know what I mean?
You've taken money out of our community.
Right. That's exactly right.
And then they get popular, and something like COVID comes around, and they jack the price up through the roof. It never come back down.
Right.
That's the unfortunate thing about anything.
Right.
Once
It's not
going to
come back.
They figured out they can get their money for it, and it doesn't. It's not going to. That's not good business.
Right.
Right.
So,
once they
but
figure out
when
we'll
the
pay for it.
604 was $5,000 or $6,000, I could see the reasoning behind it. I could see what we were doing it for. But now, crate motors, like I've said it before, it's $9,000.
Yeah,
10,000 if you want.
It's no longer affordable.
A larger team can go buy 10 engines, send them all to a dyno, find the one that makes 10 horsepower more than the other ones. And if you build engines, you can build them identical all day long. There's always one that will outperform the other.
100%.
Okay. So you find the one that's the good one of the bunch. Okay. And then you sell the other, you find the good 3 of the bunch. If you bought 10 and sell the other 7, the big teams can do that.
They got the capital.
Yeah. Jake, on the other hand, orders one from Pete Moore Chevrolet, and you're stuck with what you got.
Right.
And, and maybe it only makes 403 horsepower as opposed to 410. You don't think that 7 horsepower makes a difference? Well, you're wrong.
Right.
Because
especially,
it does.
Well, and we've seen that at the Derby this last year, and for the last several years. I mean, these, even in the Pro Late Model class, these cars are so evenly matched. I mean, when you've got 30 cars within 0.2 of a second, that 7 horsepower could be the difference in qualifying 18th and being on the pole.
Right.
I mean,
Making the show or not making the show.
Exactly.
And there were no little, we had no little teams there was no scooters from Avondale building a car on a carport in the 100 lap race this year. I'm sorry. It just that those days are gone.
Yeah.
Those days are gone. So how do we get them back? Well, the outlaw class was supposed to help bring them back, but then that sort of got, heck, look at me.
Yeah.
Again, I will use myself.
And I said that, with Tim's
As an
episode, I was
example.
like, we're guilty of that ourselves.
I'm guilty myself. I wanted a brand new car, but the rules were set so I could do that.
That's the nature of competition. We're going to get everything we can get.
I'm going to take everything I can get, and it does not matter. I will figure it out, and that's the way racers are. Unfortunately, we are our own worst enemy.
Absolutely.
100%.
But how do you keep that? How do you stop that? And the only real way to stop it that I know of is there has to be either you're going to have rules or you're not going to have rules, or you figure out something like the Crown Vic where you've got a box.
Don't get outside the box.
It'll get there.
Well,
it's going to happen
to a degree, but there's only so far you can take it. And the biggest thing is we got to get it. We can sit here and talk about rules and this guy don't like that guy and the seals over here and a Ford versus a Chevy. And we can talk about that till the cows come home. The biggest thing is the racetracks have got to put butts in the seats.
Yep.
Southern Raceway has to me, I could be wrong, but that is probably an example of a racetrack that has a committed community that goes there no matter what.
Yep. Rain, shines, tidal wave, it don't matter.
Exactly. There's a group of people that go to that racetrack. Well, guess what? They race more than everybody.
Right.
You know, Tim, we have 7 races or 10 races at Five Flags this year. They don't even want to race in the month of July. I get it. It's hot. I'm old. I don't want to sweat.
Right.
Okay. I got you. But I still think that there's probably an avenue where we gotta have the track presented more. If you want to make racing survive, we have to make it viable for the little guy, be it a Crown Vic or a GT class or an LS late model or whatever you want to call it. Okay, we have to make it viable for the little guy to go compete. Because the truth be told, and God forgive me, and people will hate me for what I'm going to say, the Snowball Derby has outgrown the blue collar.
Right. Well, I mean, you're not wrong.
Late model racing in general.
No. The Snowball Derby. I mean, just about all of it from Friday night till Sunday. So we're talking modifieds, outlaws. You know that it is very hard, and takes a lot of effort to go and compete on that level at that particular race. It's hard for the blue collar guy. And how do we put it back? And going back to my days with the S34, I was competitive in spite of myself,
right?
Because it was somewhat blue collar. So I don't know the answer.
And I don't know. It's kind of like putting toothpaste back in a tube or putting smoke back in a cigarette. I don't know if we could ever get it exactly back the way it was in our quote unquote golden years. You know what I mean, of racing. But I do think that if we, first and foremost, and you said this for years, and I'm kind of regurgitating what you said, but you know, the racing is a entertainment first. And I think that if the racetracks as a whole, and it's not just Five Flags or Southern or Flomaton or Pollard or whatever, it don't matter what racetrack it is in the country. But if we can make racing exciting to the point where that little kid is aggravating his mom and daddy all during the week. Hey mom, hey dad, let's go to the races this Saturday night. That was awesome last week. You know what I mean?
Well, with that, you got to compete with the iPad.
Well, not only that, but
I've got the remedy for what you're saying.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I don't know that I want to share it. I would rather I'll share it to a degree, but I just got to believe there's a sport out there that's not even real, that has a following of millions of people on a nightly basis. And why can't we integrate some of those principles into racing? I'm not saying fix races or choreograph.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. But so
I'm just saying.
Well, and
I want to put kids involved. Kids love.
Yeah, and I think that Lee Fields was very good at that.
Absolutely.
You know, he was an innovator. I mean, he was a wrestling promoter, but he was an innovator on that stuff. You know what I mean? And I think that if we can get I think technology has hurt racing as much as it's helped it, because when I was a kid and growing up around racing and with you and everything else, we talked about racing on a different level. Like, it wasn't all this stuff on Facebook or this or that. We talked about
Social media is awful.
Right. We talked about it at the water cooler at work. Man, did you see this happen last week? You know what I mean? I remember stuff going on at the racetrack that we still talk about to this day, 25 years later. You know what I mean?
Hey, look, I remember when I was a kid, we would congregate at the Tom Thumb down the street north of the racetrack, and we were all there. And me and Clint were kids, and you know, all the guys would kind of get there and drink beer or whatever after the races. And I remember, you know, Crazy Joe Leslie running out in the middle of Pine Forest Road to throw a brick through somebody's windshield because they got in a fight at the racetrack.
Oh, God.
But honestly, that did a lot, because those two guys, hey, his name was Ken Shirley, number 73. It was the best memories, because those dudes would put on a clinic and people would be, it was like the little old woman on the front straightaway. It was like Bowman Gray.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bowman Gray is a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Right.
The little old lady on the front straightaway giving Joe the finger the next week.
And I can tell you, when I went to NASCAR Tech, I lived in Mooresville. We went to Bowman Gray a lot. And that place, there wasn't a seat every week.
And it's like that every week.
But what you know, our promoters, and I'm not outing anybody around here. Oh, well, we don't want that kind of
bull crap, man. That's
you
what
don't
puts
like
butts
counting
in the
money.
seat. Right.
You don't like counting money.
Right.
If you don't think that right there will put people in this coming back, you're wrong.
You talk about that too. I'm trying to figure out how to put this on, but it's almost become too professional with the racing. Like we need to like back it up and make it look like anybody could do it, or not anybody could do it, but you know what I mean? It make it more easier to get into.
Well, just Cletus McFarland after the ARCA race.
Mm-hmm.
That was the best interview. That was
that not the best? But
mm-hmm.
you know what? And the guy's a YouTuber. He understands what gets attention and likes and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you, that right there made him money somehow just by his interview. Somebody's going to say, I'll sponsor that guy for the next race because he promotes something that my company can benefit from.
It's not as fake.
Well,
when you look professional and buttoned up and there's no rough edges and everything else, people know that ain't real.
Well, yeah. So it goes back to trickle down economics, and we've talked about this for years. When here's the problem with racing, in my personal opinion, right now, is you've got trickle down economics going on from the quote unquote rich kid in NASCAR and stuff, and they don't have a blue collar racer anymore. There is no Dale Earnhardts, there's no Rusty Wallaces, there is no even Dale Jr. and stuff. So it's harder for a guy like me that's come up the same way that Scooter did, and there's nobody for me to pull for. There's not a driver like me. There's not a driver that has changed an engine standing on 2 2x4s while water run underneath my foot just to be at the racetrack the next day. You know what I mean? Bubba's
the closest thing we've got,
right?
At least in the pavement world,
right?
And, the dirt track's still got some of that, but Bubba's the closest thing we've got.
And if you look at Bubba Pollard's, you just proved my point. If you look at his fan following, it's huge. You know what I mean? It is absolutely. I mean,
hey, when NASCAR figures out that people love Dale Earnhardt because he was relatable,
yes,
because he came from nothing, and why is the movie Rocky successful?
It's just same principle.
Okay, it's no different. Nobody wants to go see cookie cutter kid driving the and sorry if I'm offending anyone, the Anthony Campy car,
right?
Nobody knows that kid, and he's going to go out there and lead laps simply because his stuff is just superior.
That much better.
And it's like remote control car racing almost.
Well, and I think that. So I'm
sure he makes money doing that. I don't fault Anthony Campy at all.
Absolutely not. Well, and it goes back to these rent rides that we were talking with Tim about. There's a business there, and if you look at the Donnie Wilsons or the Mr. Jet or this, these guys, this is their business. This is what they're doing now because these kids and most people today, not just kids, are not mechanical. You know what I mean? And that's just like Ricky said last week. There's very few people that are still building their own engines in racing, and I am so thankful for the education that I got from Sid, and I build my own engines, you know what I mean? And I go through and I can do things that most people can't, I can take a car in my shop from a bare roll cage, whether if I buy one or build one, and it never has to leave here. I don't have to take it anywhere for anybody to do anything on my race car, but that's a rare thing today. Like there's very few people, especially in the higher ranks anymore, that's doing that.
Well, look at, Shelby. Why are you going to build a car? You need to buy one. You don't have time to build one.
That's exactly
our
right.
lives. We don't, and not only that, everyone wants instant gratification.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So we all want stuff right now. That's the problem with the world.
Yeah.
But, going back, you honestly, we've got to be what we are. If you ask me, if someone from NASCAR were to call me tomorrow and go, "Hey, what do you think's wrong?" Oh, I'll tell you what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong is you're trying to make your sport a worldly thing,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And when in all actuality, it is a southeastern sport,
right?
Okay, and that's just being real.
Well, and I think that most racing fans, especially from our area, from the Dale Earnhardt area and stuff like that, I feel like they forgot about me. And they forgot where they came from, and
I absolutely believe they forgot where they came from.
Yeah. And I think that everybody knows that is the truth, but there's most people, and we don't have to worry about that on this podcast, but most people that have a huge platform can't say that, you know what I mean? Because it's a big brother issue or this or that. But until we can get back to people talking about, and just not to interrupt you, but think about this. In the last 15 years, some of the best rivalries that we've seen at our local asphalt track came out of what division?
Lower class.
The spectator division.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? The Jim Pokrantz and the
Langhams.
the Langhams.
Chad Robinson.
Right, absolutely. And that has been something that people can talk about. They can get excited about it. Be like, man, I can't wait to get back to the racetrack.
They love to hate somebody.
Right. You know, and here's the thing, and I love Jonathan to death. Me and Jonathan Langham are great friends. But, man, he loves that stuff because it gets people excited. And it don't matter. There's no such thing as bad publicity. So if you can get the
publicity is where you're going with that. I'm not editing that out.
Whatever.
That's a real moment. You
right.
believe it.
But you know, but he loves that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And
but he gets it.
Right.
Howard was around with Clifford Strickland,
right?
And you know, we started the show. You know, we might be into the second episode now. I don't know, but we started the show. I'm like, look, you guys, y'all missed it.
Right.
Because I'm going to tell you, I remember, you know, Five Flags on a Friday night with Jerry Lawley and Junior Needekin, David Pearson, Davey Allison, Bobby Allison. And I'm talking about a Friday night.
Right.
Okay.
Just, regular show.
In a Camaro. Right. And my childhood, I just got to tell you, so one of the fondest memories I have of growing up at Five Flags. So this is Jesse Holmes' side, you know, because Uncle Jesse.
I love old Jesse.
Yeah, that man took time with me. He didn't have to.
Right.
And I credit him with making me part of who I am also. But I remember one night Clinton Jeremy had got in trouble and he took just me to the racetrack. And after the races, we went down in the pits and Bob Bean had a black and gold Camaro late model. Looked sort of like the Bandit, you know, like Smokey and the Bandit. And that thing was immaculate. And after the race, Jesse was down there and he was talking with Herman Smith, was a driver back then, and Roger Keller, and they were all standing there. And Bob Bean picked me up and put me in that car and let me sit in it. And I was in there and I was winning the snowball derby. I couldn't have been 7 years old, you know. And I remember I had this great big old long shifter in it. And he was like, "You want to ride in and around the track?" And I said, "Yeah." And I remember he put me in there, put the belts on me, and rode me out. He had seemed like it was a van, some kind of van he pulled it with, and he pulled me around the track on the trailer.
Holy cow.
You know, I was in the car, but on the trailer, and I went around Five Flags. And I mean, again, we took time with kids.
Yep.
It was a blue collar moment. We got to make heroes.
Right. Yes, I agree. 100%.
You got Dale Earnhardt is Elvis. I mean, look. He is. Yeah. That's I heard Cletus, they were talking about do it for Dale or whatever. Look, I wasn't even a Dale Earnhardt fan. You know that. Yeah. Right. But when he died, that was the worst day of my life. It changed the sport I loved.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in some ways for the better, but in a lot of ways it's never returned.
No. And it's never been the same.
Never will. And the thing is we gotta find that magic again. Tony Stewart could get it a little bit, but then Tony would be abrasive because Tony don't want to be messed with when he's working. I understand that, but we, in the vanilla world everybody wants to live in, where we're politically correct and we don't want to hurt feelings, he ruffled feathers and it kind of hurt feelings. It didn't ever bother me. He was cool. Right. But the thing is we've got to find that happy medium. We got to get people back to the racetrack. You got to get kids back to the racetrack. We've got to get that kid sitting in that car, kiddie rides, bicycle races. You know, and I know Timmy don't want to race. Timmy is a hustler. That guy works his tail off. Okay. As does Ricky Brooks or John Dykes. Right. You know, that family, the Dykes family, has done wonders for South Alabama Speedway. Right. You know, Tom at Southern, people don't know the undertaking it is to run a racetrack. Right.
So unappreciated, underfunded.
Right. You're never going to get it. But the thing is, honestly, if we want to make it sustain, we've got to find a way to get the people to come back in the land of social media, in the land of telephones. And, you know, the world that we live in right now, there's so many options, and people hand a kid a PlayStation and that's where they sit. Give a kid a steering wheel. Let's take him out and let's let him see Crazy Joe Leslie and Ken Shirley fight it on the front straightaway.
Right.
But I mean, again, I was at Bowman Gray. There was a lady that had a Tim Brown tattoo, the entire back piece. I mean, that thing was huge. And I'm like, are you his cousin or so? Yeah.
No, super fan.
No, she's a fan.
Right.
She got a tattoo, for life now, tattoo of a race car that will degenerate.
I know what you're talking. I was there. I've seen it.
I don't understand, but I mean, that's
Tim Brown and what's the other one?
Myers.
Myers.
Yeah,
Right,
Myers.
if you mess with them on that, if you spun them out, that place would want to jump out and kill them.
There were fights in the stands over, and I'm not saying we want that at the racetrack. Okay, nobody wants that, but that rivalry.
That's how much passion was there.
That's the passion that has to be rekindled if we're going to save it. Are we going to save it making rules? No. Are we going to save it instituting a crate motor? No, you're not.
No.
Because that stuff you're trying to look.
You need to make it real.
All the promoters need to get this through their head. Don't try to save me money.
Mm-hmm.
Build a box, build a set of rules. That's what it is for 10 years. I don't want to hear it again.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I will mandate tires as Hoosier messes up or doesn't mess up, or if we need to get American racers.
Right.
If it fits in the box of the rules and goes through the box of the rules and has this engine in it, it is legal. We're spending too much time.
Well, look at, if you just going off of what you just said, look at IMCA. All right, the IMCA modified, basically until this crate motor stuff come along, and a quick change rear end, it's been the same rules since like 1992 or 93 or whatever.
Small changes, but very small, not costly changes.
Right, that's exactly right. So and just like what you just said, the tire in a modified has always been the limiting factor. You know, so up until this crate motor deal come along, you had a class that was thriving. It thrives all over the country. You know what I mean? But it, like he just said, you don't change the rules. And that's where the sanctioning body comes in, and it gives the class the integrity.
As long as it's the right sanctioning body. Because there's other ones that have went the wrong way.
Well, there's other sanctioning bodies that have changed the rules in the middle of their national event in a hotel room.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's not how you get racers. That's how you kill a class.
We can't fill that field of them cars at all.
Right.
You look at you brought up the quick change with the IMCAs. I mean, so when me and Sid were racing IMCAs, we had 4 or 5 different chunks for a 9-inch Ford rear end. Well, those things are $500 a piece.
Yes.
A quick change is $1,800.
Right.
It only made sense.
Right.
I mean,
100%.
you weren't hurting
There's
me.
certain things like that make sense.
Yeah.
Let those changes
But
happen.
it took IMCA. They dissected that down to. I'm sure there were meetings for days about that, but it was the right move to make. You know, I understand the spirit of the crate stuff. I understand the SEAL program they're trying to do. I get the spirit of it. But stop trying to save us money. Right. Because the thing is, and Richard Childers, you know, will echo what I'm saying. We're going to try to do it. Okay. We're going to, you know, Josh and I, when we go to the racetrack, I'm not even going to get into some of the stuff that we've done to try to bend rules. You know, it's in some cases, it worked to our detriment, not our advantage.
You stop that. I've never been a rule ever.
Whatever. Anyway, it just honestly.
I think with the crate, if you're going to run a crate motor, give an open motor option that is competitive with it.
Well, but how do you do that?
Weight.
Okay.
Spoiler.
But the thing is again, you get into, okay, I'm going to add 100 pounds if you got an unsealed engine. All right. Well, here's the story. That 400 horsepower 604 crate, and we'll just use IMCA modifieds. Okay. That thing will hook better than Josh's home built 377.
Well, that's what I'm getting
So
at,
why am I toting weight?
Right.
No, I'm not saying that you're going the wrong way with me.
Yeah.
So the crate motor is dominant.
Well,
right?
Absolutely.
Give the open motor the same spoiler for one thing.
Yeah.
All right. I got an open motor. This crate motor is whipping my butt because it can hook up so well. Give me a spoiler.
I'd actually give the open motor an inch taller spoiler. Go with a 3-inch spoiler versus the 2 if you're really trying to make it more of a level playing field.
If you've got a race like the Clash,
but we're sitting here making rules.
I know.
Right.
We're buying aluminum.
Yep.
But this particular rule, I think, would help because it would give people more options and give you the ability to run the open motor versus a $9,000 crate motor.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you have a race like the Clash, and all of the cars that made the show but one have crate motor, there's one open motor that makes it, and everybody going home's got open motors. There may be a competitive advantage to the crate motor, so maybe we need to do something with the open motor to get them in the same playing field.
Well, I think what ends up happening is the sanctioning bodies are They go, oh, well, that open motor makes 750 horsepower and that crate only makes 4. Well, guess what? That is not in every case. It just you can't strike that wand and go, hey, this is the way it is, because you actually it has to be tested. And then how do we test it? And how do you go about comparing apples to apples in the perfect scenario? Because Josh's car's got a 4-bar, Scooter's car's got a Z-Link, or we've got a lethal chassis versus a I don't know, pick one. Drawing a blank here,
right?
But
shell car,
a shell car. There's so many. There's just too many variables to paint something with such a broad brush.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you 100%.
You're making rules. You're deterring people.
Right.
Okay. To put it on the asphalt side of things, again, I don't even pretend to know what the ins and outs were of the decision that was made to disallow certain seals by this person and that person and this guy over here. Come on. Well, all you've done is you've made it now where the backlog of engines for the big dogs just keeps pushing Scooter off the table. And now I can't, here we are,
right.
We're getting ready to start the season. My engine's yet to be touched. The one that's 100% correct. There's nothing wrong with that engine. Built local in Pensacola, nothing wrong with it. I can't even get it looked at by someone that has a dyno, which is what I want.
Right.
No offense to the builder here in town. He doesn't have a dyno. I'm getting my butt kicked by somebody that had a dynoed engine.
Right. Absolutely.
So, the thing is, I want my stuff to go to someone good. Well, I can't even get my foot in the door. So now when the season starts, we're going to have to tote the 100 pounds, which again is to my detriment, because there's nothing, just because I don't have a seal doesn't mean my motor's not legal.
Right.
It just means that the guy I bought it from fixed it himself, which is the absolute truth.
Right.
So, it just puts us in a situation. There has to be some way. There has to be something that someone can come to a middle ground and go, okay, fellas, we got to figure out a way to make this, more even, because it's in the crates were the answer for a brief history until we figured out that we could gain an extra 60 horsepower because Jake Moore built it instead of Josh Goodwin, and Jake has a
dyno and
a dyno gen, engine dyno, and Josh has a whatever, pick it out, whatever name. You got 2 different dynos. One's a water brake dyno, and the other's a wheel.
Right.
So you're messing us up.
Right.
You are. But again, I just want to keep going back to, it's not just that. It's the blue collar.
Right.
Think of the Rocky movie. Think of why people love Dale Earnhardt. Think of, and I think that if we can get back to those things that made racing successful from the 80s through the 90s, I think that you could find a way to bring people back to the sport. Because there's people that's turned it off and never turned it back on.
Me, I haven't watched a NASCAR race in years.
And NASCAR does not pay my bills, nor have I turned a race on to watch it. I don't care to watch it. If you ask me, I'm seeing 4 really great race car drivers and a bunch of people that bought rides. Right. I could be totally wrong. Right. I could be wrong in that statement.
Playoff deals of circuits too.
But we're chopping onions over here because and all just crying about something that ain't.
Right.
Worth crying about, because they're not going to change. NASCAR's got what they got. That's their product, and they're going to roll with it all the way to the grave, unfortunately.
Well, and I think that
and if you follow them, you're going to go to,
well,
I'm just telling you.
That's where I was just about to say, and that's where I was just about to go, is this trickle-down economics, as far as racing goes, is going to be the detriment of local racing as well, because of the decisions being made at a higher level. And that's the kind of stuff that I wish that these local promoters would be like, I'm not following that route. I'm not doing that, because I know
you got to have your show.
Right. And my clientele doesn't want what they're putting on.
I'm going to go back to something Ricky Brooks said last week. They kicked him out of the SEAL program or blocked him. He wasn't in communications. And he made the comment, there's people that don't even know how to even open an engine up that are making decisions on what we can run about engines.
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my look, and Josh knows this, you don't, but I'll share with you, Jake. Can I build an engine? Yes. Do I want to build an engine? Hell no. There ain't no way. I'm sorry. I told my wife this the other night. She goes, why don't you learn how to cook? I said, because I don't ever like the way it tastes. And it's the same thing with building an engine. If I build an engine and I put all that time and effort into it, and I messed it up, I'm twice as hard on myself as I need to be. I would rather Josh build my motor, and I have, for whatever reason, I have a disconnect from it, and you've got people that have no clue how to assemble a shock or what's even in a shock, or you've got people that don't know the ins and outs of engines, that do not know some of the tricks that are being pulled behind the scenes, and they're mandating rules, and they don't even know that the very people they're mandating in is the people that's working against what they're trying to accomplish. You can't, that's like the ABC body rule. Back when I raced supers, we would get a body from 5-star and you would rub on that thing.
Oh yeah.
And so I would spend hours. I had a Ford Taurus that looked like an El Camino one time. The deck lid was so long, and had the spoiler all. I mean, I had this thing tricked out to the point where Gary St. Amant, we went out and went 1690 and missed the show, and he went slower than us. And when we got to the track the next morning, his crew was over there with a tape measure because we had an open trailer. My car was just sitting outside. Crew member was over there with the car cover pulled up, measuring my quarter panels, and was fixing his car just like mine. I think it was Gary St. Amant, but it was one of the big dogs. But I mean, we were stretching quarter panels on Saturday morning because they saw my car stretched out like that. So we make an ABC body rule, okay, which is great. We got ABC bodies, and you've got, people going to run. It's got to be a compliant system. Well,
got to fit the template.
It's got to fit a template. Well, there ain't but one show in town building an ABC body, or maybe two. I don't know if AR
5-star and AR. Yeah,
I don't know if AR is still in it.
No, I think they are.
Are they?
Yeah.
I don't know, but you've got two. So we've monopolized. So you brought up earlier in the podcast about Revenge. Mm-hmm. That poor old guy went out of business.
Yeah, damn sure did.
Out of business.
And he had all the molds. I would love to know what happened to all his
I know
molds.
where they're at, or I knew where they were at. They're next to Sonny's on Pine Forest Road.
Really?
Yeah, them's fiberglass shop. But the thing is you basically, Lightning Light was building the Monte Carlo body that was really wild. It was good looking. Dave Mader posted a picture of his car back in that era, the 118. It was orange and white.
Yeah,
I think that was a Lightning Light body. That thing was sharp.
Mm-hmm.
But you basically ruled that out. It's not legal. And then essentially the cars have been in a stagnant appearance since 1999. I don't think that or I'll say at least from 2002. From 2002 to 2009, I don't know that Bubba Pollard's car looks any different as far as the body shape.
No. Well, and that's and you've talked about it for years. The evolution of some of these classes have made it where the common fan cannot go to the racetrack and tell the difference from class to class to class.
Well, that's a no number one. If someone that doesn't attend races shows up and they can't tell them a class from class, and I think Hugh Deary, that was famous for Rockford Speedways, where I heard this. Yeah, there has to be some differentiation, some way to differentiate each division other than speed.
Well, and that's where with the super late models, and I mean, if you look at the Gary Blue days and you look at some of these bodies, I mean, we call them pioneers and we call them innovators, but man, they were just good fabricators, and they could understand what they were trying to accomplish with aero. And I mean, hell, Charlie tells the stories of, back in the all-pro days, even of taking drops of oil and going to the super speedway and putting drops of oil all over the nose of the car and reading how the oil in the wind, went on the body. And then they'd come back, cut the body up again until they got it to do what they wanted it to do. Mm-hmm. That's just smart. You know what I mean? And
those days are gone, though. You're never going to get that back.
Right.
They had to put them in some kind of box because we were getting pretty wild. But then what am I racing right now? I'm racing probably, and y'all call it the Batmobile. I hate it when people call it that, but that thing's wild.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the racing is no more or no less entertaining. Yeah. And the body is half the cost of what an ABC body is.
Right.
Not even half. I'd venture to say less than a third.
Well, I mean, that goes
said and done.
Well,
honestly.
That goes back to when I had my Pro Lake model in 2010. I got in a little bitty wreck, nothing major, but it cost me $1,000 to fix it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I could have put 2 bodies on my modified back then for that money. You know what I mean?
Well, and then again, you got to keep us from eating ourselves. Right. Yet we don't need the rules. Don't save me no money.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm. The rules are what they are. And then I think that the other thing is, like I said, we got to get the kids have got to come back, man. Yep. The kids have got to have a hero.
Yeah.
My hero was Jody Ridley.
Yeah.
And in fact, y'all need to figure a way to get him.
We are working on that now. We're going to
um,
try to have Jody on the show.
I got more heroes than that, but yes, kids, if you don't have that, who is their hero? SpongeBob?
Right.
Come on, man.
Right.
You need somebody out there.
So Scooter, I mean, those are all, I think you have a lot of valid points on a lot of areas with racing. And I think if we can get the kids back excited, Tim said something the other day about the monster truck show that he had at the racetrack, and how they engage with fans and how they engage with the kids and stuff like that. I've been to one of those shows, and from somebody that's been in racing for a long time, I thought it was kind of corny. However, if you look around, all the kids were just excited and lit up about it. You know what I mean? So we have to, if we can figure out that way to, like you said, to give the heroes back to the kids.
Absolutely.
And I think, once a year is not enough, in my personal opinion, of meet the drivers. You know what I mean? These racetracks, once a year, they have a meet the drivers and the kids come down. Man, that ought to be an every other week thing. You know what I mean? That's how you get these kids around the race cars, and they smell them. You know what I mean? Because when I was a kid, my favorite thing to go watch him race was the smell of the racetrack when you walked in.
Funnel cakes and race fuel.
Oh man, it was awesome. You know what I mean? But that smell hooked me at a young age. You know what I mean? And I to this day, I love to walk through the main gate at Southern Raceway during hot laps and walk out and see it for the first time and smell the smell. Mm-hmm. It's still one of my favorite things at 37 years old. You know what I mean? But it goes back from being a kid.
You bust off a race car, that smell itself is just...
Yeah,
right.
They ought to make a cologne.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really and truly. But I think, and like you said, Scooter, I mean, if we can get the kids back involved,
Well, you talked about the monster trucks. What is, again, going back, I've referenced wrestling, obviously. Mm-hmm. What does it have in common?
Yeah.
I'm just saying destruction,
right.
And I'm not saying we need to go destroy race cars. I think that ain't it at all, but
there's
got
to be more than just cars making a circle.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's got to be some entertainment there.
And maybe make some rivalries.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't know this. Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon were friends.
Right.
Well, yeah.
But
they had the biggest rivalry on the TV, and
they did that to sell T-shirts and hats.
Exactly. It worked.
I think we have forgotten, and I think the model that some are following is too vanilla.
Yeah.
And when anytime you take freedom to speak, I don't care if we're talking about our Constitution or freedom to speak,
because you're scared of getting canceled.
Yeah, exactly. I think anytime you take that kind of thing away from people, you destroy the realness of it, and that's essentially what has happened. Again, that's kind of what I referenced when I was talking about having a worldly view towards where we want something to go. I'm not interested in worldly. I'm interested in what Scooter likes and the way I want to raise my kids. Mm-hmm. And going back to what I said, man, I had heroes. Yeah. Was my dad my hero? Of course. Mm-hmm. Of course he was. So was Jody Ridley, Red Farmer.
Yeah.
I got some heroes that that probably don't even know they're my hero. Ricky Haugen is my hero.
Yeah. Well, and touching on that, when me and Josh started this podcast thing and we were talking about what it was going to be, I had to tell him, and he agreed with me, but we don't need to make it fake. We don't need to, we're not Channel 3 News, The reason podcasts are as popular as they are today, and a lot of shows talk about this, is because they're real.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just Josh's people standing around talking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Honestly, we gotta get the heroes. You got to look at the model of monster trucks. We've got to race more. I know our promoters are busy. Mm-hmm. And they're awesome people, awesome family. I've known them my whole life. Mm-hmm. And I'm not taking, and I realize that it is a job to open those gates every time. And I am thankful that they do that. But honestly, racing was every Friday night when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And I know that the racers will spin themselves into oblivion, and some people came forward and they like it when we race here and there. Well, it just goes back to what I said.
Yeah.
We have 8 divisions, split it up. Hey, here's a thought. let's bring something in no one's ever seen before.
Yeah, like a big block modified.
Well,
or like
a big block modified on dirt. How about a
wheeling modified?
A wheeling modified at Pensacola.
Oh, we built one.
I would rent a ride for that. I don't know how I'd come up with the money, but I would rent a ride for that.
Both. Me and you both.
I just honestly, there needs to be something. We're missing something. Hey, movies aren't selling out, but you know what? The movies are so PC and full of worldly crap.
Right.
Nobody cares to go see that stuff anymore.
Right.
And Hollywood's too stupid to realize it.
Right.
We can't relate. I'm sorry. They've rewatched the same story 100 times, and I'm done with it.
Right.
So let's just be real here. We got to get back to what's real. We got to make rules that make sense for the little guy over the big guy.
Well, just like Ricky said last week, I mean, we need the guy from 15th to 30th more than we need the 1st to 15th.
Absolutely, 100%.
You know
Hey, that guy. I remember growing up, there was a man that raced, and he wore his penny loafers, and he bought his engines from AutoZone. He raced in the late model division at Five Flags and was there every week, and was glad to be there. Yep. And you need those people. Otherwise you're paying. You're probably paying your purse off the pit gate.
Yep.
And I mean, when I look up in the stands, and here's another one. When football season starts, you need to have football playing at your racetrack if you want people to be there. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you got to rent, buy, purchase, go get 100 TVs, do whatever you got to do. We live in football country. I am a former football coach, and will never coach again. I'm done. Mm-hmm. But you got to understand your crowd and what they want to see. And there's other things. If you want people to come drink beer and watch racing, you're going to have football playing once, September gets here, August.
Well, and I think, I think every single racetrack around here could do it. I mean,
that's simple.
It's feasible to go get a projector, go get a screen or whatever. And whatever the game of the week is, because there's always games of the week, have that game on. Just
Absolutely.
Like you said, you know what I mean? And I mean, we've seen racetracks do that at certain times.
Yeah, I didn't come up with that on my own.
Right. And
bring the good time back to it. Here's the thing: the Derby's big, the racing's cool. Yeah. What have you and me said about the Derby 100 times?
It's the party.
We go for the party. Bring the good time back.
All right.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, the Snowball Derby consisted of this, and I'm talking about like elementary age child, just to let you know how much the world has changed. So the highlight of my Snowball Derby wasn't just the race. My parents would ride me around, or my grandparents, or Jesse Holmes.
Yeah.
We would get in the car and ride to all the hotel rooms up and down Highway 29. There was no hotels on Pine Forest Road.
Right.
But we would ride around and look at race cars.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody had an open trailer, and they were all drinking beer, and you'd see people changing engines and working on tires or cutting with a torch or doing, and I'm talking about at the Motel 6 now, we ain't in the pits. People took their cars home. You didn't leave your stuff there.
Mm-hmm.
There was something for people to see. I think that one of the detriments to the wall at Pensacola is you can't see what's going on.
Right.
We didn't need cars going out like Eddie Craig did and almost hit my math teacher, oddly enough, in school. But we didn't need that to occur. But, we need to see what's going on. I don't know if that means, parking cars out by the fence and bringing them in through the turn 2 entrance. I don't know. But kids will see that and go, they're racing tonight.
Mm-hmm.
My youngest son, Gavin, I don't know if you've heard this story. He says, so he's like 3, not reading age, right? So we lived in Rockford, and we were of lower middle class means. I couldn't afford to go to the races every week, and we were going by the racetrack, and it was racing season, and he says, "Are we going to the races tonight?" And I said, "No, buddy, they're not racing tonight." He says, that sign says racing Saturday night, and today's Saturday. We found out at that moment Gavin could read.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He could read. And I mean, it's the strangest thing, but the kid knew exactly what it said to the T, read it to me. And I didn't know he could read. So just goes to show you, kids are, when you get them used to something, if they can see it and visualize it, they start to understand. It's just something that simple. I mean, we've got to get the kids. The kids are everything. You want racing to survive. We got to get heroes. We got to have kids. And by the way, our heroes, I love Bubba, you know, I do. And Dale Jr. and all that. Man, I'm so thankful that those people contribute, you know, to the sport I love. But we need the Josh Goodwin to hand out bubble gum. We've got to find some way of getting. I was going to the racetrack at an early age. I rode on the back of the wrecker at Gateway as a child, and I mean an elementary age child. I would sit on the back of the wrecker in the middle of the racetrack, and when the wrecks occurred, I was going out on the racetrack with the wrecker to pick up the wrecked cars. I was a kid. There's not many. You just don't see it.
All right.
And so where you want to know where everybody went, that's it. Right. I mean, and if you want, you got to get the kids there. You get the kids there. You get mom and dad. Dad might be interested. Kid races go-karts now, and then we've brought someone in.
Right.
That's
racing is expensive, but it is a good thing for a young person.
Absolutely.
Like racing,
we talked about,
it's given me everything I have, but it's also kept me out of a lot of trouble. I didn't have the money to go get in trouble because I spent it on a race car. You know what I mean?
100%. You know, racing kept me out of trouble. It graduated me from high school.
Yeah, me too.
You know, I mean, honestly.
Wayne and Cindy Burkett bribed me to graduate high school with an LR4 camshaft and a set of lifters. That's a true story.
Yeah. So, you know, we started this segment about what would I do? We got to get the kids, stop making rules and making it easy on the tech man because look, and I know the tech men are not out there.
Right.
More of the reason, let's look at what we're doing here and let's have a committee of people from top to bottom. I ain't never been called and asked one question about a rule. No. Been racing my whole life and know the car inside and out, upside and down. And even though I'm not an engine person, I can tell you about engines.
Right.
You know, I can say, hey, look, you know, I'm not sure who's making those calls and why they're occurring on either surface in any division. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know if we're copying the guy down the road. You follow the guy, you want to end up, you know, like the track that closed up last year, just keep using their rule book.
Right. Well, and doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results each time is insanity.
Well, yeah. I mean, and again, I'm not singling out anyone.
No.
Because it's occurring at Southern, Tri-County,
everywhere.
You know, Rockford Speedway, you know.
And let's get on the same page.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, IMCA.
Yeah.
Dirt racing, I don't know about asphalt, but dirt racing around here was at its strongest during the 6-shooter days when the dirt tracks talked to each other, helped each other out, took nights off to help the other one, vice versa.
Right.
And I'm not defending anybody.
We have 5 dirt tracks, though, don't we? Is it 5?
4.
4.
Yeah.
Was
4.
5.
Yeah, it was 5.
It's 4.
The
and I know
track,
it's harder to do it than it seems, but
the racetracks still do talk to one another some, not like they did then. We don't have a class like the 6-shooter class with enough cars to do that anymore, except for maybe the modified class now.
But I'm just going to say this, and I don't know for sure if this is the reason. I'm not saying it is, but I'm just going to point out a coincidence here. When the tracks stopped talking to each other, pure stock class died.
100%. Yes, it is.
So I don't remember that much. I remember the 6-shooter and Adam Ellison and you know, those guys were good. And,
the first one we had 45 pure stock.
Yeah. So I remember, wasn't that 11-inch tire recap?
No, it was an 8-inch Towel City recap.
Yeah.
Was
8-inch.
Okay.
Yeah. The last 10-inch tire class that we had was a street stock when the RC4s or something like that.
So if you want me to pick on the dirt tracks, I think the 8-inch tire is awful. I think it makes the
I was
holes
going to say
worse.
bring the 10-inch tire back,
We
please.
need the 10-inch tires back. You got to get people off bump stops because you might as well be out there with a shovel every lap making yourself a hole because every car that comes in is taking a shovel load of dirt out, you know, because they're plowing in there, laying it over on the right front. And I saw cars at Southern 2 weeks ago that was decambering, you know, the right front's leaning the wrong way going through the holes and it's just eating the racetrack, just cutting a trench. You might as well be plowing taters. And the 10-inch tire days, that hobby
the racetracks
class,
were smooth though back then too.
Yeah,
because of the 10-inch tire.
Yeah, I think that the 8-inch tires on the dirt kind of messed it up. That's just my opinion. There's a lot of 8-inch
I will say
stuff.
A late model with a 15-inch tire will whole lot of track.
Yeah,
but that also goes back to bump stops and
the late models is different. Let's talk blue collar. We're making racing better for our area. You know, I hope your guys' show goes nationwide and we can talk about this on a national level. But here, we don't have the dirt they've got in Iowa.
No, absolutely not.
And when you can't, just because the 8-inch tire is great for IMCA, that's fine. But for a 3,100 pound Monte Carlo or a whatever else you got, I'm sorry. I understand the spirit. I get it. But the 10-inch tire on our surfaces in this part of the country created better racing. Just my observation. Could be wrong. Y'all feel free to shoot holes in it and argue with me, whatever you want to do.
No, I agree with you, actually.
And I ain't trying to put on the image that we're trying to make excuses here, but also the 10-inch tire would make the cars easier to drive, and we would have less caution fest. Believe.
We didn't. So going back to the 90s and S34 days, if you would, I don't recall number one, if you spun out, you were done just about. I mean, they may give you one mulligan, but if you spun out twice, you were out.
Right.
And, so there wasn't a lot of that. The biggest complaint I got with the dirt stuff around here is not the tracks, it's the drivers. Come on, guys. If you have wrecked, I watched in the races the other night, the same guy spun out 4 times, brought out 4 cautions. His butt needs to be in the pits. You need to work on that thing, dude. You're messing my show up. Well, and by the way, I got a curfew.
Well, and I think what the problem with that is that the racetracks have had to, quote unquote, coddle somebody's feelings. You know what I mean? Because yes, I get it. That guy that spun out 4 times did pay his money just like everybody else did. But back in your days, and man, we didn't worry about somebody's feelings. If you spun out twice, man, take that shit home and work on it.
But you also had a car count.
Right.
Yeah, nowadays, you can't afford to lose a car.
That's what I'm saying. They coddle to the inferior racer because they don't want to lose the car count when they should just treat it the way it is. Call a spade a spade.
Cause an adverse effect.
Right. Call a spade and say, hey, man, you spun out twice. You're not going to win the race. You're not going to do anything. Take that shit home and work on it. You know what I mean?
So there's a lot to be said for racing. And again, I don't proclaim to be the savant of all things racing in this area. I'm just making an observation that I see, and
we got to do something different.
But something different on also. You want to drag racing into it? I can drag that one in too. There's something that can be done to get the kids involved in all forms of motorsport, and we better be figuring it out, or we will not have our tracks will be neighborhoods.
Well, and here's the thing with drag racing, and Tony Stewart said this when he started going around the drag racing, you buy one ticket for a drag race and you can walk up in somebody's pit and watch them work on their race car. You know what I mean? And that's part of the culture.
You got to know how their stuff's laid out too. I don't think we could do that because let's just face it, there are some parents that will not grab their youngin's hand walking through a pit area.
Right.
But drag racing, you don't have a hot pit per se.
Right.
So that would be harder to do. NASCAR's got the deal. I will pick something that I saw that I don't necessarily like it, but it made sense. They've got like an observation deck where you can walk out and see what's going on. Well, I was going to say that. So, they build the decks at Southern now that some people have to watch the races. If instead of having that, what if build a deck along the pit fence there? Yeah.
That's access from the grandstands that kids can go up and look in the pit.
Right. Well, there's a whole myriad of things we could do at any track like that to certainly to get some fan involvement. Drivers got to come be seen standing at the top of the track, watching races. That way they're approachable.
Right.
We could do, that's one simple thing. We'd ask the drivers, hey, if y'all get a minute, could you come up there and see our kids?
Right.
And maybe the guy that's the announcer says something. Hey, we got, Larry Boutwell up here.
And to speak on that, the asphalt's not big, doesn't have this problem, but Southern, have the post-race interview.
Well, yeah.
Have the victory lane instead of sending them off to save time, which I get time, but let them stop and get out of the car and do something.
Well,
let them relate to the driver.
We've got just dirt, right? So, just something to throw out. I know you guys know Tom and whatnot, but why is the victory lane a ceremony that's had after? Why don't we? And sorry to all the people that like parking there. Let's put victory lane over behind the playground.
Yeah.
Right. With a backboard and a thing, and you pull your car over there and you get interviewed while the other race is already going. We've got a way to do this. You could,
or the fans can go back there and see it.
And then lastly, why are you waiting to the end of the night to take pictures? That poor guy could be up there taking pictures while his colleagues out on the track taking pictures of the race that's going on.
We can move that billboard at Southern that says victory lane, right? We can move it back to the edge of the pond and make a little victory lane on the infield behind the wall.
Well, that's what Deep South did.
And while we're doing that, we can be rolling the next class and having a little interview.
Well, I don't know how the noise would be. But I'm not a sound.
Well, if they're just
technician,
idling around, you can get away with it, especially if you wait till they come, get past you.
There's a lot of things. Again, we got to get the rules where the blue collar guy can do it. That's going to bring people to the track. We got to get kids involved. We've got to find a group of people with the tuner crowd that likes these LS and Coyote motors and the G. Back then, Alton Boyd and Johnny Mitchell and Gene Bacabella, and that was the GT class. That was all Mustangs and Camaros. That's all that was in it.
I can tell you right now, there is a pile of third generation 82 to 92 Camaros laying around.
I mean, so you could it just say, hey, look, it's a GT class. I don't care if it's a 72 or a 2002.
Well, bring
it
back and make it the Super Street class like we used to have. Call it the Super Street class and make it like that. You know what I mean?
We're making rules for racetracks here, and we don't own a racetrack. Maybe I will one day. I don't know. But
just shooting ideas, though.
Yeah, but I'm just saying there's some things we want to bring people in. We got to think. I saw a race on TV that was at I can't even think of the name. It's a high bank paved oval, I think, somewhere Carolina, Virginia, somewhere. They called it the any car class, and it was any kind of car, street car. Had to be basically like Crown Vic rules, but it might have been a Nissan Altima or a Trans Am or a minivan.
With the economy back on the rise and interest rates coming down, if you're looking for a new home in the Panhandle area, give Levada Burrows McIntyre a call with Century 21 BE3. She's been serving the Panhandle, helping buyers and sellers achieve all of their real estate needs. Give her a call at 850-554-2180 or find her on her website at levadasales.com.
It's like you said earlier, it's an entertainment venue.
I am entertaining. Number one, racetracks are first and foremost entertainment venue. I want to sell hot dogs, hamburgers, funnel cakes, and snow cones
and tickets.
And tickets. Okay, and my racers will reap the benefits if I can make that.
Well, if you can get the fans packed, then now you can stop worrying about your income from the pits.
Well, absolutely.
And now you can give more to the drivers instead of taking more from the drivers.
Well, going back again, this is not my ideas, fellas. I mean, we had one-on-one drag racing. Mm-hmm. So Five Flags used to start them coming off of two, and you'd race back to the start-finish line. And there was a guy with a little yellow Mazda that would blister people. I mean, just wear them out. And then Gene Bacabella and his Mustang, we're talking about street cars, right? And much like what Tom's doing at Southern, right? But it was at Five Flags. Now, the stakes are a little higher. We got a wall there now. But I remember, too, somebody went off 3 and 4 and it flipped that thing over and over, and that was their go-to-work car, So
I think the school buses are a great idea. The school bus races bring a lot of people, and the kids riding around the track on the school buses.
So Rockford Speedway, and this another thing. Sorry, Timmy, if you're listening, I'm going to throw you under the bus. We got to get rid of that concession stand on the front straightaway at Five Flags because we could have go-karts on the quarter mile. We could have figure 8 races at
chain races.
Rockford Speedway, when I was up there, had a figure 8 trailer race.
Oh God.
Okay. And it was any kind of trailer, boat trailer, camper trailer, trash trailer, whatever you had. And it looked like the Romans at the Coliseum. They would sell out a week or two in advance. And yes, it is a nightmare to clean up. I'm not letting you get on my surface at Five Flags to have a trailer race, right? But honestly, it put people in the seats.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. I saw a guy just totally, he Dukes of Hazzard jumped through a 40-foot camper, and people went nuts. They loved it. You got to put people in the seats, man. We got to give them something to see. The monster truck idea, the things, there's so many things we can do.
And, me and you've talked about this before. The casual race fan is who we're trying to excite and that kind of stuff.
I want new fans. I don't just want the casual.
But that's where I was about to go with new fans. So if and we've said this, and I'm
get them in there with that stuff.
Well, but I'm stealing a little bit of his idea on something. If I had a racetrack, I would look outside of my normal market. Mm-hmm. I would go like Pensacola is huge in the religious community. Okay, we've got some really big churches with a lot of people that go to that church. I would go to Olive. I would go to Marcus Point. I would go to Pace Assembly. I would go to some of these churches and say, hey, guys, next Wednesday evening, we're going to have prayer meeting at the racetrack. And we're going to have a gospel group come in and we're going to sing and this, that. You don't charge these people anything to come and listen to some gospel music, but you open your concession stands. All right. those people come out to the racetrack, and just like me and we talked with Tim, there's so many people in this community that don't even know there is a racetrack on Pine Forest Road, let alone ever been to it or been inside of it. So you get these people, you come out and they start looking around, man, this is some pretty good food and this is, a wholesome environment. We're listening to some gospel music, whatever. I think Friday night, let's come back and watch the races and see what they got going on here. Now you've got people coming that ain't never been to a race at Five Flags before, or any racetrack. It don't have to be just Five Flags, but any racetrack. And now they want to come back Friday. Now we've made a new fan. And then when you couple that with what he's talking about, they're going to be like, man, that's the best, cheapest entertainment I've ever seen. We're coming back next Friday. You know what I mean? And it's a domino effect, but you have to do something to get the people in. You know what I mean?
Well, look, there's so many great things, and we can sit here. We're not spending our money.
All right.
We're spending someone else's money in this conversation. And I hope that at least maybe some of this will take root and help our sport, because I want to see it grow for my grandkids like my granddaddy did watching me.
Right.
And, I know from my own life experience that if I can get a kid to the racetrack, it's sort of like teach a kid to fish and he'll never go hungry. Mm-hmm. Well, if you teach a kid to race, he won't go hungry either, because he's going to work his butt off
to the race
to get to the racetrack, and he's going to learn something. Hopefully, now there are those exceptions, but I'm sorry, we got to get it back out where the people are involved, because it simply is to our detriment if it doesn't happen.
Yep.
I don't see it going much past the next 10 years. I hate to say what I just said.
Yeah, no,
but
I agree with you.
I can see the end in sight if we don't make a change.
Right.
And I hope that this doesn't fall on deaf ears.
Right. No, I agree. I hope that, because, we've been talking about this for 15 years, and it's finally to the point where, and if you look at NASCAR and stuff, NASCAR realizes they have a problem, or they wouldn't be trying
everything in the book.
Right. Everything in the book. The problem with them is they've alienated their core fan.
You're
you know what I mean?
You're getting farther and farther away from what you need.
Right.
And every time you might, yeah. Well, we've talked about all this. I have one last question.
All right.
For Scooter here. And I've heard all the history. Josh has told me about everything, but I need the either funniest or most embarrassing story about Josh that you can give me.
Oh, man. Here we go.
Oh, my God. Funniest or most embarrassing story
I'll take either one.
Lord, I'd rather do the one tell the funniest story about myself. Let me tell that one first, and then I'll tell Josh. So the funniest story about myself, we're running at LA Raceway, and someone wrecks, and they get two cars hooked together in 1 and 2. And I'm sort of idling around the track, and it took them a long time to get these two cars unhooked. Mm-hmm. And we're going around under caution. I'm looking at the cars, and I'm like, God almighty, they're still working on that thing. Well, we made about 5 or 6 laps like that, and they still hadn't had them apart. Well, somewhere in the middle of that 5 or 6 laps, somebody pulled a tractor out on the racetrack with a box blade on the back. And he just parked it right in the middle of where the cars were circulating. Well, I was running about 4th or 5th. So I get over to that wreck, and there I'm following in the line, and I'm looking over there at the cars are trying to unhook, and I looked up, and I ran smack into the back of that box blade.
Oh, God.
Put me out for the night. Most embarrassing moment I ever had in my life.
Damn.
So going to Josh.
Pulled a Juan Pablo.
Juan Pablo.
Yeah, Juan Pablo.
Yeah, I didn't hit the jet dryer, I hit the tractor. So, yeah. Oh, man, my granddad cussed at me so bad. That was so awful. Anyway, I destroyed my racing that night. I don't think I got to race for a couple of weeks after that. Got the radiator, the frame horns, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, we had to straighten it out. So, Josh, funny story. I'm trying to think. Non-racing related?
Sure.
Oh, man. God, I don't even want to tell it. I ain't going to tell that one.
Could be when he's a kid or
I'm trying
up.
to think of something that we can tell here. I don't know. You know what I'd rather do? Because I really don't. Josh, I guess the Ricky Brooks and the headers thing was pretty funny. So when Josh sold Ricky some headers for a modified, and they were rusted out or something, and Ricky tied him to the back of his scooter and drug him around the pits the rest of the night.
I do remember that.
That was pretty funny. Ricky likes giving Josh a hard time.
Yeah.
Josh, it was funny to hear Josh tell that guy, "I'll tear the crankshaft out of that thing and we'll put it on the scale tonight." After my first night back in racing. So, and I'm like, "Josh, I am not fixing to rebuild this engine for $700. I am sorry about you."
But I would have. I'd have put the crankshaft on the daggone
and that's the
scale
funniest
pad.
thing about Josh. He is so passionate, and I know he would. I don't know. I know that I'm probably his hero in some way, and I don't know why I deserve that because I haven't won the races that I should have won, and I'm by no means no hero. But Josh has been. He is my ex-wife's little brother. So Josh is proof that just because a family goes through a hard time, you don't lose everyone. I treat him as if he's my own, and Josh has matured and grown up so much in the last 15 years. I would say it's been fun to watch Josh, and I admire Josh's abilities building these cars. He's surpassed me, in his ability. I know he thinks that there's all these tricks I know how to do, and I'm actually copying off his paper now. So, it's been a pleasure to have Josh in my life, and he contributes a lot to making me successful at the racetrack. So I'd rather leave it like that. Okay. Just tell a bad story on myself.
I got you.
So I appreciate that.
And I was trying to get some ammunition on him. But
I don't. I mean, there's some other stuff I could tell you, but he was too young to know any better, so I'm not going to do that. And but nonetheless, man, it's been a pleasure. I hope that no one takes anything I said and gets mad at me about it or nothing. I want to help. I want to help. Ultimately, I want to own a racetrack one day. I think. I don't know why. I think I'd be good at it.
I know a bunch of racetrack owners that would think you're crazy.
Yeah. But in my brain, it's a way to give back on something that, again, it's gave me a livelihood. I didn't know it gave me a livelihood. My mom and dad certainly didn't know, that it gave me the livelihood that it did. But I can attest to every skill that I have somehow coming from the racetrack. And that is not an exaggeration. And as of late, God's blessed me. I've done well. Because of those skills. So it just, I want to give back some way. I'm by no means ready to stop driving, and I don't ever intend to retire from working. I think I want to work until I meet Jesus. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I got no reason to even quit. I enjoy it too much. So I'm just blessed. And I think that one day maybe we'll own a racetrack somewhere down the line. We'll see what kind of promoter I am. I'll probably be ready to, sell it day number 2. But yeah, I think that I just want to give back in some ways. So,
well, Scooter, it's been a pleasure for me to hear all these stories. I've heard Josh talk about things, but I haven't heard the whole story. And
we could have a whole nother. There's a lot of gaps.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
we could go on and on and on. And
I've heard all about y'all, you two, and Todd, and I kind of wished I could have got involved in this sooner. In life. But
we've had a good time. I can't lie to you. We've had a good time over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
I'm sure glad to be a part of it now, and I appreciate y'all letting me come in and be a part of the race crew and the team and everything else.
I want to say that I think what you guys are doing is awesome. I think that it's something that's much needed. I'm not sure where I fit in as far as the people that are scheduled before me or even around. I don't feel worthy.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said before, I'm going to say on the recording, to this day, our most popular episode is Todd Jones.
Yeah. It honestly, I just had good people around me. I had great heroes. I had good people that I looked up to, and, they all made a difference in this kid's life, and, I commend you guys for having, and let's make sure we get those heroes on here.
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt.
Because they're dying, and I hate to say that, we're all dying. But.
Well, and I'll be honest with you. I mean, and we've said it just about every podcast. That is the whole reason why I'm doing this is to tell those stories. And God loving, we just lost him, but I think about Richard Worsham.
Yeah.
And I love Richard, and he loved me, and he was very, very good to me. And
so he gave me the gorilla name, right?
So I did know that, but let's tell that story right quick. We'll tell a Richard Worsham story as we're talking about him.
So old Richard, we raced a lot together. Richard raced at Op quite a bit. He raced on the dirt, too. But my memories with Richard are from Op. And when I first moved back home from Chicago, I ran into Richard at the racetrack, and I think we had the red car. I think it was Sid's red car.
Yep.
And I had this old silver and black fire suit that I'd got in Chicago that was about 4 sizes too big. And but I just had to have the thing. Anyway, Richard comes over there, and I hadn't seen him in a while, and he slaps me on the back. He said, "Boy, you look like an old silverback gorilla with that thing on." And I was like, "What you mean, gorilla?" He said, "Yeah, you look like a big old silverback white gorilla."
I'll be damned.
And so that's what sort of sparked the whole gorilla. I've always had like this, that's like my spirit animal thing, but it's just weird that he said that and then it stuck.
All right.
So yeah, that's
the vanilla gorilla.
Yeah. But yeah, so I kind of adopted, I liked it, but Richards were that kind of, I miss him. He was,
but yeah, man. And that's why, that's honestly,
he was always like family.
Yeah.
And he's the kind of person that if I hadn't seen him, and I hadn't at this time when he called me the gorilla, I hadn't seen him in 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's like we picked up right where we left off. 100%. He was just such a
genuine
person and was glad to see me. And
every time. Always had a smile on his face, always had a word
Richard.
of it. Yeah. And he, he was good to me. Him and Ryan, they bought that modified, that left-hander I had. And that's how I met Richard. And ever since then, they were just, he treated me like family, you know, and but that's why we're doing this.
That's the kind of person he was. After you met him, you were his people.
Right.
I mean,
and.
Yeah. And there's, my granddad, Foots Kimmons, Tony Taylor, those cats aren't around no more.
Right.
And what I would give, someone was trying to write a book about my granddad, but what I would have given to have a recording of him in a sit-down session like this was something that I would cherish.
Right.
Or even, and Tony, same thing, Tony's not with us anymore. And I just hope that someone values these racers the way I did.
Right.
And I look forward to seeing who you guys get on here.
Yeah. I mean, we've got an incredible guest list, coming up and the sponsorship thing we mention every week, and we gotta thank a new sponsor that just come on with Lake Brooks at Z Speed Shop, Race Parts and Society. We cannot thank him enough for coming on board this week, and he'll be on board with us for the next several weeks. So we certainly appreciate that. But that's what this podcast is all about: is trying to get the local hero and just tell their story before they're not here to tell their own story.
Hey, Lake, I know he was pretty tight with Mike Alexander. That would be an awesome show.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the bleachers right where Mike hit the wall at Pensacola back in December the 4th, 1988. I know what day it was.
Holy cow.
So I'm pretty sure that's the correct date.
Well, I'd love to. I mean, that's the kind of people we want to get on the show, the Jody Ridleys and like at the Derby, we're going to do kind of like a trackside deal and try to get these, some of these biggest names in late model racing.
Your butt's going to be busy working on my hot rod.
Well, I mean,
we're going to have to trackside around the whole outlaw schedule.
Right.
Or if by the grace of God, we have some way I'd like to try the snowball one more time.
Well,
I got one more try in me before I say I can't do it.
And, we can, maybe this podcast will lay on the right ears and we get that opportunity based off of this. So,
I think I'm fast enough still. I just got to have the right piece.
That's it. Well, Scooter, we certainly appreciate you being here today and sitting down with us. This has obviously been one of our longest podcasts, but it was all good information and it was good to go down memory lane for you. I'm certainly thankful for you, not only being family, but your influence on me and the people that I have met through you and because of you has changed my life. And I'm certainly appreciative of that. But Jake, you got anything else?
Yeah, I got a couple things. One, go check out Facebook. TikTok is live. YouTube is live. This video will more than likely be posted on YouTube, so you can actually watch this instead of listen to it. And also, if you're hearing this, it's going to be Wednesday of this week. The Clash on the Coast is in town. Go support your local racetracks. Go get butts in the seat, and let's make these events big and keep them going.
Well, and that is a huge thing. The Clash on the Coast, like we talked with Peyton. That's going to be an awesome show this week. I think we're going to try to go as many nights as we can, and we'll try to bring y'all some updates from next week. With our guest next week is going to be a good one. So we certainly appreciate everybody listening. If you are wanting to sponsor the podcast, please email us at theshorttrackshakedown@gmail.com, and we'll be more than glad to get back with you. But Scooter, once again, we thank you and for being here. And Jake, I appreciate you being here with us today. And that is episode number 6 in the books.